I'll wait 2 minutes. Yeah. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silent meditation? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. You weren't kidding.
Huh?
You weren't kidding.
Oh, it's not a hostile crowd. It's just a good crowd. Where? Oh, okay.
No, that's you. Yeah.
I recommend that minutes pertaining to an individual's job performance or character remain sealed. Superintendent's evaluation.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion by Ms. Luzon, a second by Mr. Callahan to recommend the minutes pertaining to an individual job's performance or character superintendent's evaluation remain sealed. Those in favor? Any opposed? Recusal or abstention? That was unanimous. Thank you.
I recommend that minutes pertaining to litigation and the legal update, Superior Court, CA number WC 2020-0213, Kelsey Zell versus Charahoe Regional School District et al. Remain sealed.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion by Ms. Luzon, a second by Mr. Callahan, that the minutes pertaining to litigation legal update, which is the Kelsey Zell versus Charahoe, remain sealed. Those in favor? Any nays? Abstentions or recusals? One recusal. Thank you very much.
I recommend that minutes pertaining to litigation legal update for the town of Barrington et al. Versus Barrington School Committee et al. Remain sealed.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion by Ms. Luzon, a second by Mr. Callahan. The recommendation of the minutes pertaining to litigation legal update, town of Barrington et al. Versus Barrington School Committee remain sealed. Those in favor? Any nays? Abstentions or recusals? And that was unanimous. Thank you very much.
I recommend that minutes pertaining to litigation legal update, RGB, remain sealed.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion by Ms. Luzon, a second by Mr. Callahan, that the minutes pertaining to litigation legal update, RBG, remain sealed. Those in favor? Any nays, abstentions, or recusals? No, that was unanimous. Thank you very much.
I recommend that minutes relating to the privacy of students and their records, approval of home instruction requests, remain sealed.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion by Ms. Luzon, a second by Mr. Callahan, that the minutes relating to the privacy of students and their records remain sealed. Those in favor? Any nays, abstentions, or recusals? That was unanimous. Thank you very much. Ms. Juicy?
Sure, executive session votes. The first was executive session minutes, home instruction requests, March 22nd, 2022. Approved by Abbott, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Juicy, Liguori, Luzon, Lyle, Macaruso, Reynolds, and Spears. Home instruction requests for tonight. Approved Abbott, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Juicy, Liguori, Luzon, Lyle, Macaruso, Reynolds, and Spears. And finally, return to open session. Abbott, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Juicy, Liguori, Luzon, Lyle, Macaruso, and Spears approving.
Thank you, Ms. Juicy. On to recognition.
So please join me in congratulating the following. The 2022 Skills USA State Competition winners. Gold medals went to Donato Cabral, Gary Gardner, Zane Harrington, and Sean Van Hoosen for Teamworks. Hannah Dion for Welding Sculpture. Adriana Abbey, Architectural Drafting. Edmund Comer, Firefighting. Fiona Smith, Criminal Justice. Trey Lazalkis, Welding. Noah Danucci, Carpentry. And James Harding for the State Pin Design. Silver medals, Danielle Orby, Criminal Justice, Elena DeAngelis, Job Skill Demonstration A, Caleb Caswell, Carpentry, Bethany Chase, Ava Dower, Nicholas Fox, and Alana Healy for the Health Knowledge Bowl, Trevor Crowley, Kelly Bensel, and Shay Smith for Crime Scene Investigation. And our bronze medals were Lindsay Pettit, Medical Math, Cole Rinn, Marine Service Technology, Matthew Budry, Technical Drafting, Mitchell Daniel, Industrial Motor Control, Elijah Henley, Electrical Construction Wiring, and Caitlin Burns, Advertising Design. Congratulations
yes.
to all. I would also like to recognize Emma Eldikin, our Terre Haute High School Mental Health Club organizer, on being recognized by Channel 10 for sharing her experiences and supporting others through the formation of her club.
Thank you. This is, yes.
I'd like to comment on Emma's TV appearance. I watched it live, and I was very impressed with the way she handled herself, and everybody in Charahoe, and especially her parents, should be very proud of the young lady, because I thought she did a fantastic job.
Thank you, Mr.
Agreed.
Day. We all agree.
Agreed.
Thank you so much. Good. It's time for public forum. So anyone in our audience, public, who would like to come forward to speak on any issue or item that's not on the agenda this evening may do so now. So please come forward. Please state your name. Yes, sir. Please come to the podium, and where are you from?
Okay, hello, everybody. Good to see you tonight. School committee, you're doing a great job. School system is a great school system. So I want that out right away.
Thank you.
The name is Jim Sullivan. My background is teaching for over 30, and teaching school administration and on the school committee over a period of 35 years. So I came here tonight to ask you, especially the Tri-Town people, to help me decide whether I should run for school committee again. Anyway, it should be interesting in the sense that I'm going to read what I made bullet points of, and if anyone wants a copy of them, I have more copies. But anyway, this is, I'll make it quick, go through them, and if I have time, I'll expand on whatever. Okay, so I'm making a unique request to the Charahoe community. That's the Tri-Town people. I would like you, some input from you concerning my possible decision to run for school committee again. Please email me at jim05059eagle@aol.com if you support my decision to run or not. Either way. Leave your phone number if you would like to talk to me. Here's my main concerns. To keep CRT, critical race theory, and any forms of teaching racism out of a school system. Now, apparently we don't have the problem yet, but I don't want it to happen. The other thing is to foster a positive and productive collaborative between parents and school teachers concerning the curriculum taught to their children. again, parents are not domestic terrorists, and they shouldn't ever feel that way. And neither should the teachers feel by talking to them, they're talking to the people that are domestic terrorists. Anyway, so I would like to foster a good feeling and be concerned about the collaborative and teachers being able to talk to parents about the curriculum. We are at a critical time in our children's educational development. Hopefully, you know that. And we must be vigilant and proactive. So that's pretty much what I had to say. And I guess I have more time. Or do I? Anyway, let me
25 seconds.
just expand on one point here. Again, CRT apparently is not taking place here in the school system, but they're now calling it other things across the country, other names for it, because CRT and critical race theory all of a sudden is a hot button, and they're now changing it and giving it a different name so they can get it into school systems for the indoctrination of children. And that's what I'm concerned about. I don't want to see it come here. And it apparently hasn't. And I'm proud of you people for keeping it out of the system, because there's a lot of things that students should not be taught in the school system. So that's about it. And I hope that I can get some feedback. My email is on my, well, you got it because I just said it, but it's also on the bullet points that I put on the paper that I did up for comments. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
And
Mrs.
God
Sullivan.
bless America, and God bless this school system.
Thank you.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't think you'd get up
Okay.
and talk about it.
Oh, wait, we got a person coming up.
He handed him out. Yeah,
Good
look at
evening.
it. I don't-
I'm Etta Zasloff. I live in Hopkinton. I'm a retired teacher from Charahoe. It's a great place. I'm here representing the League of Women Voters tonight, and I would just like to call to your attention as school board members and the community that there are graduation requirements under review right now. Big changes coming. And I would like to alert you to a meeting that the league is sponsoring with RIDE on April 21st in Westerly. And we set this up because all of us from South County are always complaining that the legislature, RIDE, nobody pays attention to us. And so we complained that the closest hearing was at URI in Potter Hall. I don't know if you've ever tried to attend a meeting there, but there's no parking. It's very difficult. And even though a lot of Charahoe teachers did show up for that hearing, I went. There are many issues that the community needs to be concerned about. And I'm not saying I'm against it or for it, but we need to be involved. And this is a great opportunity for all parents to voice your opinion and understand, even though many of your kids are probably small, it won't be long till they're in high school. And you want to know that they're getting an appropriate education to be successful. So I was going to email everybody, but I want to make sure that you get this copy and know. So if you just pass that around to all the members, there's one for everybody. So thank you very much. And in case you don't know, the League of Women Voters is about educating the community. That's our bottom line, and that's the purpose of this meeting. You'll get a presentation from RIDE about what they're proposing, and I think have opportunity to ask questions, but they will give you specific ways to make testimony in writing about what you feel about this program. So it's really important. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Goldie Williams, Richmond. There is CRT in Charahoe and also in Gender Issues. They're just calling it social
Goldie.
justice.
Speak to us.
Oh, they're calling it
Yeah.
social.
No, I
justice.
know, but speak to us.
Also, I noticed with the budget here, that's
The-
only minus 357.
Hey, Goldie,
and
I'm sorry for
27.
interrupting, but we will have a chance to speak on the budget with letter D. So you'll have a chance to speak if you,
Also, with the certain special needs kids, they're just getting pushed along until they graduate without,
if you want to speak, I'd love to hear what you have to say, but we're going to wait until the D on where we're talking about the budget specifically. Do you have anything else that you'd like to speak?
no, I was just speaking certain special needs kids,
Okay,
like my son, who's 23 now, got pushed out of, to graduate before he was ready, and there's certain kids just like that.
okay,
That's all.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? No? Okay, we can move on. Thank you.
Item A, K-8 mathematics curriculum revision. That item was discussed at the last meeting. Susie Scanapico provided the presentation. A vote should have been taken to approve the curriculum revision. I recommend approval of the K-8 mathematics curriculum revision.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion by Ms. Luzon, a second by Mr. Callahan to approve the K-8 mathematics curriculum revision. Any discussion on this matter? I know we had that before. Any questions? No? Okay, I'll take it to a vote. Those in favor of the revisions? Any opposed? Abstentions or recusals? That was unanimous. Thank you very much.
Item B is the Ride Kindergarten Jumpstart 2022 Summer Enrichment Grant Application. Enclosed is a draft copy of the application that our Development Officer, Katie Kirakosian, is in the process of submitting for approximately $19,942.28. As applications are due April 29th, 2022, and our next meeting is not until May 10th, I'm recommending approval to submit the Ride Kindergarten Jumpstart 2022 Summer Enrichment Grant by the application deadline.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion by Ms. Luzon, a second by Mr. Callahan to approve the RIDE CTE grant, I guess for kindergarten, is it pre-kindergarten?
Yep,
Jump
somewhere,
Start,
yep.
okay. Approval of the grant to be submitted. I'm opening this up for discussion or questions. Anybody have any? Anybody have a chance to? No? Looks pretty straightforward. Okay,
Yeah.
those in favor? Any opposition? Recusal or abstention? Thank you, that was unanimous.
Item C is the RIDE CTE Teacher Grant for LEAs with RIDE-approved CTE programs. Director Auth and Development Officer Katie Kirakosian received notice that RIDE has decided to leverage part of the Secondary Perkins 5 reserve funds to support the certification and training of CTE teachers. ELAs may apply for these funds to pay for the costs associated with providing professional learning for CTE teachers and for reimbursing teachers for the cost of certification to teach their CTE programs. The deadline for submission was Friday, April 8th, 2022. I'm recommending approval of the submission of this application to RIDE.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion by Ms. Luzon, a second by Mr. Callahan to approve the RIDE CTE teacher grants for LEAs training program. Anyone, I'd like to open this up for discussion. Anybody have any questions? No. Just one question I had, it was interesting. Do we normally, is this a new grant or?
They did it again last year as well. Sometimes
Okay.
if RIDE has additional funding, and we don't, what we put out for, we don't necessarily get all of
That's
it.
always my question. So you may
But,
not get all of it.
Usually it's based on high leverage movements, and sometimes some districts are in more need than others.
Okay.
But we often get many approved.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Sorry. Those in favor? Any opposition? Recusals or abstentions? Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you very much.
Item D is the allocation of seats on the Charahoe School Committee. This item was requested by William Day. You received an analysis and legal opinion from Attorney Andrew Lentz, associate of John Anderson. I concur with Attorney Lentz and recommend that the allocation of seats on the Charahoe School Committee should remain at 12, with 4 seats for Hopkinton, 4 seats for Richmond, and 4 seats for Charlestown, in order to yield the most equal representation in proportion to population for all 3 towns in the district, based on the data gathered by the federal decennial census from 2020. Our attorney Lentz is going to review what he's shared with each three of the towns, as well as with all of you.
Should we make the motion? And put
There's
you
no
to-
motion.
Yeah. Should we make, no, have him discuss first? Okay, thank you, sorry.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Andrew Lentz. I'm an associate of John Anderson. We drafted a letter that hopefully has made it to all of you with our calculations pursuant to the Charahoe Act for the correct allocation of school committee seats based on the most recent federal census. I have to admit that my confidence in my mathematic ability is a little bit less than my confidence in my legal acumen. So one of our goals in drafting the letter was to be completely transparent on the calculations and how we arrived at our solution. As my all of my math teachers said, we want to show our work. So that's what we wanted to do, so that in case there were any errors or issues, that it was easy to spot and we could tell with certainty exactly where that went wrong. So I'd like to assure you that John and I have checked and double checked all the calculations. We feel very confident that we've reached the right solution, but we also want to make it available for you in case there is any criticism. Just so you know, we also sent the letter and all the calculations out to each of the town solicitors. We received feedback from the solicitor of Richmond, who concurred with our interpretation of the pertinent statute and with our calculations. We also heard back from the town solicitor of Hopkinton, who had no issues with our calculations and our conclusions. And the town solicitor for Charleston declined comment until the town council could meet and discuss the letter. So not only have John and I reviewed it and more than double checked the calculations, we've also received some feedback from others outside who also agree with what we've the solution that we've come to. So I'd like to just jump in and explain what the letter says, the substantive analysis that we did. Just to orient you, this is all based on Section 10(1)B of the Charahoe Act, which describes the formula used for determining the number of seats for the Charahoe Regional School District School Committee. There's two important terms that you should know in order to understand how we've arrived at our conclusion. The first is the ideal number of persons represented, which we abbreviated the INPR. The purpose of that term is to determine how many residents each seat on the school committee should represent based on the number of school committee seats. So, for example, based on the most recent federal census, the population of the entire district is 24,415. If we were to analyze it based on a school committee configuration of 10 seats, to find the INPR, we would simply divide 24,415 by 10, and that would show us how many residents each school committee seat ideally represents. So in that case, it would be 2441.5. So we calculate that for all of the school committee configurations. The statute requires that the seats are no fewer than 10 and no greater than 14. So we calculated the INPRs for 10 to 14. So that's an important term to know. The second term that you should know is the maximum deviation. That is critical because based on the statute, the correct number of school committee seats is based on what the maximum deviation is. And by that, I mean the lowest maximum deviation. You find the maximum deviation by looking at the largest percentage of overrepresentation based on a configuration of a certain number of school committee seats. And you add that to the largest percentage of underrepresentation by the same number of potential school committee seats. You add those together and you get the maximum deviation. Spoiler alert, the maximum deviation wasn't particularly difficult. It wasn't all that hard to see what was clearly the correct configuration for the school committee seats. It's the same as it is now. It should be 12, four for each town. But what's important to know is the way in which we got there is by determining the maximum deviation. So I'm just going to touch base on each of the seats and how we got there. We start with 10 because, like I said, the statute requires that it be calculated from 10 to 14 because those are the parameters. 9 or fewer is not allowed, and greater than 14 is not allowed. So for 10, as I said before, the INPR is 2,441.5. So in order to determine the number of school committee seats per town, we divide the total population by the INPR. So in this case, for 10 seats, when we divide the total population of the town of Charleston by 10, we find that the appropriate number of seats is 3.275. We do the same for Richmond. And just for clarity's sake, the population of Charlestown is 7,997. Again, based on the 2020 federal census, the town population of Richmond is 8,020. So when we divide that by the INPR, we get 3.284. And Hopkinton, the total population is 8,398. If we divide that then by the INPR, we get to 3.439. So in this case, we would allot all of them to 3, which is impermissible by the statute because we have to have at least 10. So then, according to the statute, we would take the largest number, which is Hopkinton's, 3.439, and we round it up. So Hopkinton would get 4, and then the other towns would get 3, Richmond and Charlestown. So then to determine the maximum deviation from the INPR for a configuration of 10 seats, we need to calculate the per seat representation per 10 seats. So we take the population of Charlestown, we divide that by 3. We got a difference of 2,665.67. So that's a difference from the INPR, which again was 2,441.5. The difference is 224.2, shows a slight underrepresentation of a maximum deviation of 9.2%. Then we do the same for Richmond. Again, the total population is 8,020. We divide that by 3, the number of seats to which it was allotted, and that gives us the number of representation per seat, which is 2,673 and a third, which is a difference from the INPR of 231.8, which is also an underrepresentation of 9.5%. And then we do the same for Hopkinton. We take the total town population, 8,398. We divide that by 4 because we had to round it up in order to have enough seats. That gives us a number of 2,099.5, which is a difference of 342 from the INPR, which is an overrepresentation of 14%. So then to calculate the maximum deviation, we have the largest percentage of overrepresentation, which in this case is Hopkinton at 14%. And we add that to the largest percentage of underrepresentation, which in this case was Richmond at 9.5%, which gives us a maximum deviation of 23.5% for a school committee configuration of 10 seats. So then we do that again for all the other seat configurations. So hopefully I've explained it in a way that makes sense. And so I'm just going to hit on the high numbers then for 11, 12, 13, and 14. For 11 seats, the INPR is 2,219 and a half, which is a per seat representation for Charlestown of 2,665.67. Now for Richmond, it's 2,005 because Richmond picks up an extra seat, and Hopkinton remains the same at 2,099.5. In that case, the largest percent overrepresentation now is Richmond at 9.7%, and the largest percentage of underrepresentation becomes Charlestown at 20.1%, which gives us a maximum deviation of 29.8%. Okay, now we come to the star of the show, 12 seats. I know you were all waiting on this one. The INPR under 12 seats is 2,034.6, which gives us a per seat representation for Charlestown of 1,999.3, of Richmond 2,005. It's the same, of course. Hopkinton is the same, 2,099.5, which gives us a largest percentage of overrepresentation of Charlestown at 1.7%, and the largest percentage of underrepresentation is Hopkinton at 3.2%, and a total maximum deviation of 4.9%. For 13 seats, the INPR is 1,878.1, with a per seat representation for Charlestown of 1,999.3. For Richmond, it's the same, 2,005. And for Hopkinton, it becomes 1,679.6 because it picks up a fifth seat. Therefore, the largest percent of overrepresentation is Hopkinton at 10.6%. The largest percent of underrepresentation becomes Richmond at 6.8%, which gives us a maximum deviation of 17.4%. Finally, we calculated this for 14 seats. The INPR at that configuration is 1,743.9. A per seat representation, Charleston remains the same because it doesn't pick up an extra seat. Therefore, its per seat representation is 1,999.3. Richmond becomes 1,604. Hopkinton is 1,679.6. Therefore, the largest percent of overrepresentation is Richmond at 8%, and underrepresentation is Charlestown at 14.6%, which gives us a maximum deviation of 22.6%. So just to sum up, the maximum deviations for all of the possible configurations are at 10 seats, 23.5%, for 11 seats, 29.8%, for 12 seats, it's 4.9%, for 13 seats, it's 17.4%, and for 14 seats, it's 22.6%. So based on our calculations, it was clear to us that the correct configuration for the number of seats on the Charahoe School Committee should be 12, which is the same as it is now, obviously evenly split 4 per town. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Wait, no, Mr. Day had his hand up first. Mr.
Sorry.
Day and then Ms. Chambers. Mr. Day?
I really appreciate you taking this on and deciding that the sick lawyers that solve this problem, because they got to be sick to do this. I mean, the town
I'm an
of Richmond brought this out about because they didn't think they had equal representation. But this is, to me, is so ridiculous. We've worked together as a community here for a number of years. The reason I brought it up was that I wanted to make sure that the towns were comfortable with this. And you said that 2 of them are comfortable with this because there's a lot of people around here that live and die by the Charo Act. And if we didn't go through this drill as the Charo Act required, we could have had an election that would have been questionable as to whether anybody was elected. So I have a lot of respect for you and John. I sympathize with all of the work you put into that. I appreciate it, but this is a joke. The way the lawyers decided to solve this problem 5 or 6 years ago. So thanks again.
Ms. Chambers?
I appreciate that Bill brought this to our attention because I did not realize that there was undercurrents of concern that we did not have equal representation. But when I first came on the committee about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, it seems like 100 years ago. But anyway, when I first got on the committee, it was 4, 4, and 3. And I appreciate all that wonderful math that you did. And don't kid yourself, you're good at it. Okay. But we just made, if you recall, we just made the decision, let's just equal it out. And we decided to have 4, 4, and 4. And we did a gentleman agreement about that. And I don't think any town has felt that they, in my opinion, that if they have been underrepresented. We just decided to go with 12 because it was a, what's the mathematical term for that? It was equal divided by 3. Anyway.
Equilibrium.
I think Mr. Day is saying, no, no, no. He's saying over here, no, no, no.
There was a lawsuit brought by the town of Richmond, and this is how the lawyers determined that this would be 4 members equally. It had nothing to do with Charo Act. Charo Act was formed by the towns of Richmond, Hopkinton, and Charleston, and any problem with the Charo Act, the towns of Richmond, Hopkinton, and Charleston have to solve. The school district in Charahoe cannot solve any of these problems. So if there's problems with the Charo Act, It all
Right.
falls back on the towns. We're neutral in this. We do with what we're told to do by Charahoe Act. I just want to clarify that.
Okay, let me just follow up with that though. Does that mean then that if the population, which can shift anytime, we know that the population is always shifting in the three towns, that we could go back to an unequal number of representation?
Yeah, it's
Or can we stick with the,
No, I think it
legally, can
depends
we
on
stick
the-
with the 4 per?
The statute requires the calculation to be done after every federal census, which is every
Okay,
10 years. So it'll be recalculated at the 2030
Okay.
federal census, although
Good.
there is a provision in the statute that if one town wants to redo the calculations at 5 years, they can, although the caveat is that if it's not materially different than what the calculations already were, then I think they have to fit the bill themselves for redoing the work. Otherwise, the town split it evenly if it is materially different at 5 years.
Well, I think it works for every town. I think it works very well. This is a very stable committee right now.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? No? I don't think so. No, this is just more information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. The next item is the FY23 budget adjustments. I'm going to review, we did give you an updated list, but on April 5th, the voters let us know that they did not support our budget and that in essence, our 1.95% increase was too high. We remain committed to providing each and every student in Charlestown, Richmond, and Hopkinton with a high-quality public education. At the same time, we recognize we have a responsibility to taxpayers, and we will continue to think through ways to increase efficiencies and revenue without negatively impacting the quality of our programs. I have prepared a list of potential cuts for the committee to review. I was asked to list cuts that could occur if the district was to receive a level-funded budget. My recommendation is going to be that we work to cut at least an additional $500,000 in order to avoid cutting any of our staff. It is important to note that some of the cuts I am suggesting will be based on funding that is approvable and moving into ESSER 3 funds. While this is not a long-term strategy, it will provide us the support we need as we continue our work to support our students based on the unfinished learning that occurred during the pandemic. I would also be remiss if I did not mention that we were able to keep our initial budget at a 1.95% increase because we had ESSER funding to purchase our professional development, curricular resources that are connected to state legislation requirements, along with the Right to Read Act. As ESSER will sunset on September 2024, there will be items that are state mandated, such as science curricular resources that will be required. Our team is working to ensure that we have a strong return on the investment, and we have seen strong student progress this year in reading, writing, and mathematics during our implementation. However, it will be important to keep up the momentum. I have made a shift in the capital projects line from what was presented online. Originally, I did note that Charlestown flooring project based on a possible shift from a complete replacement to a spot replacement approach. We have reviewed that on Monday and determined that we would monitor the situation next year to ensure that actually was the best approach. As a result, I placed the Ashway Playground on this list. While it would be wonderful to have it, it's definitely less of a priority than the flooring would be at Charlestown. Since the vote, many members of the community have reached out and contacted myself and many of you requesting that no programs or personnel be impacted. I spoke with Representative Kennedy, who believed that the transportation funding that we are seeking to restore is still a very strong possibility. However, we will not have that information until most likely June. And we have reviewed the budget again with all departments, operating contracts, and ESSER funding to ensure a continued and thoughtful approach. So with that said, I recommend that you begin to discuss and review possible potential cuts. This is the list. I'm happy to go through it one at a time, but I will recommend that once you determine what adjustments need to be made, that Ned, you have a short recess so Ned can then calculate the final numbers.
Yes, Catherine.
Yeah, so Gina, as you mentioned, I would like to go through these one at a time. So certainly as we're voting on them one at a time, I don't know if it would be helpful for me that you discuss them all before we vote on them each. So a discussion,
Sure.
and then we make motions at the end of the discussion, so we're fully aware of what has been discussed before we make a decision on the next cut. Thank you.
All right. So at the first row for the section 4, page 28, The technology shift was 50,000. We moved 50,000 in our operating budget that is approvable through ESSER 3. As many of you know, ESSER 3 allows us to ensure the one-to-one, the broadband, so that is an allowable expense that we can shift. We also have the reduction of the labor addition for $80,000. That was given back to the district at the last school committee meeting in support of any additional needs that could occur. The 0.5 CMS Dean to ESSER 3, we already had 0.5 in ESSER to support our students' mental health needs and student services support. So because it is going to be a need. We have 1,000 students at the middle school and a high level of need. So moving it into ESSER is still allowable, but it's definitely something that we need, and we're using ESSER to sort of balance us for a minute. And if you remember, we tried not to use ESSER to put things that would cause
Recurring.
deficit spending, but this is a high level of need, especially with Title IX and the areas of supports. Do you want Catherine to ask a question?
Yes.
So with adding a 0.5 to the ESSER 3 funds, did this now bring an additional whole dean to the program?
It was always a whole dean, but it was
Okay.
it was 0.5 originally, ESSER 3, 0.5 operating budget, because it is a high level of need.
Yes.
So we provided the student support services piece through ESSER and the operating piece on like our Title IX, things like that, in our operating.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Karen and then Donna. Karen?
So the dean will be fully ESSER funded.
Correct.
Okay, so pushing it off.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
Ms. Chambers?
And that's my question. Are we just putting a Band-Aid on it for this year, this budget? Because if that dean becomes essential, and I can't imagine that dean would not be essential in this climate, does that, and we use ESSER funds, that means that we're going to have to fund it for next year's budget?
We will have to find other ways. It is definitely a need.
Yeah, so personally, I would like to make the statement that I don't want to do anything that's going to impact the safety and the well-being and the education of our programs right now. And that would be one of them that would impact the children, I think, down the road.
So you're thinking, Donna, you don't want to have it, you want it to be fully, you want it the way it was, fully funded by ESSER? and-
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, it was
Yeah,
0.5
5 and
operating,
3.5
0.5 ESSER just to start
Right.
us off.
What I'm saying is I don't think we should rely on ESSER funds to
Oh,
support
okay.
staffing, because it's just putting a Band-Aid on it to kick the bucket down the road for next year.
Yes,
Chair, can you go over the format again?
yeah, I know.
I'm not sure what format we're following, so I'm not sure when to listen and when we're going to vote. Are we doing it one by one, or are you giving an overview?
But I was giving the overview.
Yeah,
Overview, and then we're going back one by one for discussion. and
That was my
motion?
understanding.
okay.
Right,
Yeah,
that's
so-
cool.
and that's
All right.
my fault, because I then asked.
Then she asked, that's why when she raised
So
it,
no,
she
so
did.
what
She did, and I'm like, okay.
I guess my point was I didn't want to vote on that right now. I
Right.
wanted to ask questions about each one and then vote later on in the process. But I
At
will
which point we'll
hold,
have a full discussion and a motion.
yes,
Okay.
Okay.
but I can hold my questions to the end. Go, you fly right through it, and then I will hold my questions.
And then we vote one-on-one.
One at a
One-
time, right?
one-
One
yeah.
discussion. Great.
Okay.
Yes.
The next one is reduce the capital investment. That one, there are 3 projects in that line. The Ashway Playground at $33,473. The Richmond Fence, and that was the $15,000. That's the town is putting in a rotary, if you recall. That hasn't been finalized, so we figured we again, it is a project needed, but will be shifted, as is the Ashway Playground. And then the CTC compressor, we were able to work with Director Orth to find some monies for the $20,000 compressor, but to do it this year. The next item is the late bus or a bus. So we'll be revising our routes either for our operating costs or we will remove a late bus if that doesn't work out. The next item would be field trips. We do have a policy with K-5 field trips that are required. That's about $22,550, but we have $50,000 in field trips that we could hold field trips for next year. I have a 0.5 TA at the middle school. It's currently vacant. Substitute costs based on the overall spending. Again, possible risk, but it's $24,500. And then we have we had 3 specialists at ESSER to support our implementation and math need based on our data. We would move a math specialist that we already have into ESSER. so that we would get 2 new additions instead of 3. And my recommendation would be not to go past and do the rest of the lines unless we were level funded, because we could get approximately at least 500,000 from those cuts. If we were level funded, as you know, getting $1 million, not going to get that in pencils. So my goal would be to safeguard our staff as much as possible and our programs, because it impacts our work, our learning, and we have a lot of work to do. We're doing great work, and our educators are amazing, and our support staff are amazing, and our administrators are amazing, and it's not easy. So, and I recognize the taxpayers, it's not easy. None of these cuts are easy. None of what anyone is dealing with is easy. So I understand the difficulty, even in writing them, to be honest, it is quite difficult. But level funding, which is a reality, would reduce the teaching position at the high school, middle school. That would be a librarian position, which is currently vacant right now. The teacher moved out of state. The high school science position, we would shift programming, and there would still be all the science available to students, but we would be shifting priorities. The reduction of a teaching position at Richmond, 3rd grade, it would bring the classrooms to 4 classrooms, which would, based on the enrollment, would have 3 classrooms of 22, 1 classroom of 21. Possibly the teaching position at the Charleston Elementary, the 4th grade, would bring 2 classrooms to 23. And then the reduced cost of living adjustment. And that would actually, it's a little over level funding. It provides even more. Do you want to?
Okay, now we're ready to,
Yeah, but before we do that.
Okay. okay, that's
Okay. I know you have prepared this based on if we were level funded, but we still do have another referendum.
Correct.
And hopefully we can get more people out who support this district and want to keep the quality of education where it is now. So if we had to go to level funding, we would have to make this very deep, serious cuts in the staffing, in all of these things that you're recommending here. So my thinking as I approached this, when I looked at your recommendations, was if we had to go to level funding, fine. Hopefully we can get the voters out to support a new budget that we can refine now. But when we put the budget together, it was at bare bones. Even though it was an increase, it was a small increase and it was at bare bones. So I would like to approach this with not necessarily trying to get to level funding tonight. That's my feeling.
Catherine.
Okay.
If
Yes,
we
thank you.
make the $500,000 in cuts before we get to more staffing, do you know what that brings the overall increase to the budget? I don't know if you have a sense of what that would bring the overall to.
Ned can work on that. We can take other questions
thank
and come back.
Well,
Yep,
yeah,
I
while Mr.
appreciate it.
Draper's working on that, do we have other, Mr. Ryan? Mr. Callahan?
Yeah, Superintendent Picard. So could you give me a little bit of background on how these made your list?
So, to Ms. Chambers' point, we already cut things like supplies to schools, things like that. We asked all the principals to come with those, like a 10% cut already. So we sort of nickel and dimed it to the bone when we presented it to you. ESSER funding was a gift in the fact that those one-time curricular purchases for the implementation, we were allowable, and like I explained before, federal funding isn't typically allowed to supplant, and it was the ability to do that using ESSER. So that allowed us a lot of our professional learning, our teacher programming to enhance implementation. So what we did was we looked at schedules, enrollment size, class size, programs. That's what was left to be able to get to over $1 million. With the inflation and the oil and the utilities already rising costs, we could not go into things. We were already too tight. As you know, the cuts above the line that you made prior to the budget already were some risky cuts around the DCYF placements. We brought the fund balance down to 2,000. When you go back to the history of when it occurred in 2014 and the budget wasn't passed, the fund balance was not at 2%. So you were able to dig a little bit deeper into the fund balance. That's at bare bones. and it's at the minimum allowable per the policy.
Right.
So we sat with all the departments, reviewed budgets. And again, the concern is that the times aren't getting easier. We know that this is going to continue to be tougher. The more we cut this year, it'll be more next year.
Okay. Mr. Day, can Ned answer the question about the increase, and then you can have a question? Yes, thank you. Mr. Day, the
It
increase,
works out roughly 0.9% for the town appropriation.
0.9% increase. Ms. Catherine, is that good?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
Mr. Day, and then I'll take questions.
I do not want to take a chance on insulting the voters any more than we insulted them the last time around with the budget by not listening to them and trying to make some cuts. The superintendent felt she is comfortable with these cuts. I think this will show the voters. The town of Richmond had 700 some odd voters. Check the history of the number of voters that the town of Richmond's ever had. They haven't had anywhere near that in the past. So, somebody is going to have a heck of a lot of work to do to get out there and convince for the people in Richmond that voted against this budget. Hopkinton, let's be realistic. History of Charahoe. Hopkinton has probably never passed a budget in the history of an all-day referendum. Charleston usually goes, but this time around, they didn't go as hot and heavy supporting this budget as they have in the past. In Richmond, they obviously were the ones that blew this budget out of the water. So everybody is hurting, and we cannot insult these people that are hurting by not taking the superintendent's recommendation and saying that we will get through this. Yes, you're kicking the can down the road a little bit, but we don't even have an idea of whether the state's going to come through with the categorical aid on transportation and some other thing. If the state would give us what they're going to give us in the budget, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. But the fact of the matter is, we won't know what the state's going to give us until after this budget is in effect, whether it's level funded or it's accepted the way it's presented here tonight. We need to show the voters that we are listening to them and we are willing to bite the bullet. Folks, we spent $800,000 in transfers since the school year started. We have the ability to move money around, unlike the towns. $800,000 we've transferred. We've got a transfer here tonight of what, $300 and some odd $1,000 in money. So we're not going to be in the best of shape, but we're not going to be as doom and gloom as some people like to portray this budget. We need to get this budget passed this time around, or we're really going to be in a bind come the 1st of July. So we can be bleeding hearts and feel for this and feel for that, but I think we have to be realistic about it. I didn't support the last budget because I thought it was too many issues on it, and I can't support this budget unless we're going to turn around and accept the superintendent's recommendation. Thank you.
Bill, may I clarify the recommendation for all the cuts? You want the zero, you want to go to
No,
zero?
she said 500,000.
Oh, she said, okay, that's what I wanted,
That's what
Okay.
we're talking about.
Okay.
Right,
Well,
I'm
so
asking
above
that
the line.
you move
Right.
through until, and not
Okay, good.
attach staff.
Okay, thank you.
That's I thought I was listening to you.
No, you were, but there's she has us,
No,
yeah, she
no.
has us to cut the 500,000,
Right.
which is not level funded. And then she has the extra.
Well, that's where we're gonna be. I think what she's trying to do.
No, I
is show
understand
us
that.
Where we're
Yeah.
gonna be.
Right,
where
if
we're
we
gonna
don't.
be If we don't
Right,
accept her recommendation.
right, okay, I agree with you, Mr. Day. Okay,
And
just wanted to clarify.
to Bill's point, I don't feel like I'm insulting the voters. I think that there was a big campaign because I read it in the papers, I heard it at the meetings. We absolutely listen to you. I have my hearing aids in. I bought hearing aids so I could hear everything that was being said. And I think we acted upon what the recommendations were from the public. This is a bare bones budget, okay? And that means that when the oil goes up and the transportation goes up, we're going to be looking for money to keep the buildings open. We're going to be looking for money to put the roof on. And what do? Go back to the taxpayer? Level funding is not the ideal no matter what. This is a bare bones. I agree we can cut some, but we've already cut quite a bit. And I've heard many people say that they don't want salaries cut. I don't want to penalize our wonderful teachers. I don't think we should have more kids in the classroom. If you want 40 kids in a classroom, we can cut a lot of staffing. But we need to operate this district at the level that we've been serving it for the last umpteen years, and the quality is there. We want to maintain that quality. We want to focus on good quality education, and we want to focus on the safety of the children. I mean, I will recall, and I'm going on, and I don't mean to do this, but I recall that I voted for $250 helmets for the football team, which was outrageously expensive, but we wanted to protect our children. We want to protect our classrooms. We want to make sure that our kids get the best education they can on a bare bones budget. And this is a bare bones budget. Now, to Bill's point, there was an awful lot of, it's not insulting the public because we are listening to you. However, there was a major campaign out there to vote down this budget, even from our elected officials, including someone here at the table that just admitted that he voted it down. There was elected officials that voted it down. Yeah, you can applaud him for doing that. But what's going to happen when we get to level funding and we have to make the cuts that parents are going to feel the effect of it in the classroom? Okay, one of the things on here is substitutes. We had to vote to allocate more money for substitutes because we couldn't get the substitutes. Do you want your children in a classroom unattended? Yes, you do. Is that a yes? No.
Please don't, Donna, excuse me, don't, no conversation.
Okay. I'm gonna be quiet.
No, please do not engage.
Be careful what you wish for. We have a good system.
Please.
Go ahead, go for it.
Sir, I need to let the committee members speak first, and I appreciate your patience. That's the protocol. So, thank you. Mr. Luzon.
First of all, the taxpayers in Charleston voted on a 2-to-1 margin, so I'm going to listen to them. But with that being, excuse me, I'm talking. So with that being said, I'll honor whatever we're going to do. But let's remember one thing. Whatever we establish this budget at, whatever it becomes, whether we move things to ESSA, which is fine. But when that ESSA money dries up, we don't have that position anymore. Either that or we have to fund it out of taxpayer money. And if we lower the budget so much and then we need to get back to where we were, look at what that increase is going to be. So let's use a little bit of wisdom with our choices here.
Ms. Juicy?
Thank you. Let's talk about transportation categorical aid for quickly. When Charahoe was established, the people up in Providence said that we would get a bonus so that we could, to incentivize us to regionalize. And then several years ago, a couple of accountants got together and said, oh, why are we giving you this money? Right? We don't think you deserve it anymore. And like that, it was gone. We have some elected officials, Brian Patrick Kennedy and Dennis Algiers, who every year fight for that. We have others, it's crickets. They don't say a word. And we can really use their voices up at the State House to help with that money. We're not going to know what that money is until the state budget is passed, which is in June, right?
Typically, it's June.
So we can't really gamble with that money because we have absolutely no idea if it's going to come through. So it It tends to be a large number, but I want everybody to understand that we can't really gamble on that because we don't know if we're going to get it. And that is a big ticket item. So if you want to help us make some change, contact your other elected officials and ask them to help us out with that. Because there are a couple who don't say boo about it up at the State House, and they could really be helping this budget out a lot more by securing that money for us. Thank you.
Welcome. Does any other committee member, I'll take some questions from the public. Yes, sir. Thank you for waiting.
I don't have a microphone, but I feel like my opinion is just as well as everyone else here, which I've heard a lot of opinions. I don't even recall what the main topic was that we started on before everyone started to share their opinions on what the budget should be. As Donna stated as well, and other people on the board, this is a bare bone budget. You refuse to even think about not having the budget not passed, which doesn't make sense to me because it seems like that's going to be a reality in regards to where the voters stand as of, even just the way, there was multiple people in front of me that had asked questions, but apparently everyone else is more important than what the community has to say, which is overwhelmingly what I feel like the community feels like is that we haven't been listened to. So now at this point, you guys are saying, okay, we're going to propose a better budget. But in my line of work, when I give someone, they tell me that we have a budget, here's an estimate. That's what it is. I don't get 3 chances at that. I am given that one opportunity. It was given an opportunity for the budget to pass. It wasn't passed, but you still have more opportunity to make it right. In my mind, that's not fair. That's not right. That's common sense. So when I sit up here and I hear people say they want to listen to their community, but they only want to listen to the people who are going to agree with what they have to say, then that's not listening to your community. And you can shake your head and make any face you'd like, Donna, but that's the truth. When you say you don't even want to hear or consider the idea that the budget would be denied, you don't want to talk about that in open forum. That tells me that you have your mind made up already. And a lot of the taxpayers have their mind made up already because they know they haven't been listened to. It's too late to listen now.
I think you misunderstood me, but that's okay.
I'm talking,
That's
but-
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goldie Williams. There's reduction in the students. Why are you asking for more? They're going to the charter schools. I, as a parent, had one in the high school. He graduated 2020, and in the elementary, because they didn't fight me to get a plan for my oldest son and for my youngest son. That's why a lot of the parents are considering charter schools, and the education is a lot better than Charahoe. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Good evening. Tyler Champlin, Hopkinton. I've stood here before you guys and I've talked to a few of you, and I was in contact with Mr. Draper earlier this week. Listen, this is what I do. Numbers is what I do. Budgets is what I do. Taxes is what I do. So I spent a considerable amount of time the last couple of days using one of the PDF files that Ned puts out there, the E-code, which I believe breaks down the budget literally by every line item, if I'm not mistaken. It's 49 pages long. Okay. It's huge. Kudos to whoever puts that together. I apologize for you, or I sympathize with you. So what I did was I looked at the last 3 years, right? And I know the last 3 years were kind of odd years, right? When it comes to stuff we've had to pay for, et cetera. There weren't some things happening because of COVID, right? But what I did was I took out, and listen, I know inflation is hurting everywhere, right? Especially in the cost of utilities and fuel. So I took that out. I didn't even want to look at that, right? Because I know you guys, that's going to be a problem for everybody going forward. But what I did is I looked at the approved budget to what was actually spent for each category. Okay? And when I look at the actual to budget for fiscal year 21, for just these, I don't know, it's about 95 line items, right? Which isn't a ton on that sheet. I come up with an actual to budget variance of $850,000 underspent. I do that now. I was in contact with Mr. Draper on Tuesday, I believe it was, or Monday. Today's Tuesday. I believe it was Monday. It might have been last Friday. Now that I think about it, sometime. And the E code that he had put out there for 2022 was through, I believe he said February and a couple days of March, right? So let's call that 8 months out of the year, right? Right. So I annualize that. And when I look at it again, I see, hey, look, we're under budget by $415,000 this year. So in my mind, when I look at your cuts, Ms. Picard, and I look at these bottom three, which are staffing, that should be the absolute last place we go to make cuts. The absolute last place. Let's look at, I don't know, we're over budget. We're over budgeting, say, 15 grand for rubbish removal for the past 3 years. Well, why? Let's maybe cut something there. Let's not budget so much there. We have all kinds of conferences and workshops that over the last 2 years, there's been nothing spent. But we're budgeting $7.5, $4, $2 grand, $8 grand. But there's been nothing spent in the last 3 years. Guys, if we're going to cut, let's look in the details, because the money's there to cut without having to affect these teachers that perform an unenviable task in this community. I thank them for what they do. They're phenomenal. I was actually having a conversation with a high school math teacher today who I'm good friends with about this. And it's unbelievable that we can't figure out other places to cut money. I will gladly sit down with any one of you and go through this if you want to, because I really do think that you can find money. I mean, if I use the lesser of the actual to budget versus your fiscal year 23 proposed over the last 2 years, I can save $1.5 million. It looks like I could save $1.5 million in the budget. So the money's there. We just have to look a little harder.
Just raised his hand. Mr. Draper?
Yeah, if I could explain a few things and yeah. So if you go to the website, one of the things we had done, and I think it might have been commentary we'd received from you or for some other members of the public, was we put out a PDF that has a list of all the budget items that variable by about 10% or greater. And there's a lot of line items there. So what I will say, what I can tell you off the top of my head without going into the detail analysis, I know that conferences, we had a similar conversation to student activity funds, which don't show up in the budget, but there's other areas throughout the budget. There was next to no travel the last 2 years. So one of the things I would ask people to understand is our behavior from March of 2020 till 2 years till now has been very different. One of the things that's also unique, and I think we had this conversation with Mr. Champlin as well, one of the things that's unique in this community is if for some reason, and Charahoe is well suited to that, if for some reason there is more money left over in the budget at the end, it does get recycled back into Charahoe. That's one of the unique things about us being our own regional district. That money goes into fund balance. That fund balance is then earmarked to go in. That's why when we had the conversation this year about the 2% versus 4%, we were comfortable going down to the 2%. That safety net, if you will, was something we were comfortable saying we can do without that. Also, last but not least, and this is a huge number, we received a lot of criticism for our budgeting about the healthcare. Healthcare is a very large line within our expenses, about $6 million. And I think we received some fair criticism that we usually budget for a family plan. So we went through and we closely examined all that. And as Committee Member Day brought up earlier, we have some transfers now. And that's one of the places we went to take care of our fuel oil this year. And next year, we should be pretty well poised for that.
Sure.
Go
ahead.
Last year and this year, I put a freeze on anything that wasn't emergency spending around February 1 because the pandemic, it was so up and
Right.
and going. We had no idea what was going to be necessary. Some of the conference fees, just for an example, so we have like district teacher of the year, we have ESP of the year. They get conference fees as a way to sort of congratulate them for the work well done, which they didn't have access to, some of them from COVID. This year, Ms. Mankoff, who was our district teacher of the year, was able to access.
Excuse me, ma'am, let her finish. That's just rude.
So
Out of order.
Yeah, we can't do that.
But Mr. Shepherd, I'm always happy. So I will actually be reaching out. I'm happy to sit down and go through with you because
Yeah, so-
I think a neutral eye is always an excellent.
and just to
I
go back-
appreciate your
Yeah,
your
to go
feedback.
back to what Mr. Draper was saying, I don't, when I'm looking at what I'm looking at here, I'm looking at, I don't know, and I really don't know what these line items mean, right? Like I'm sure it's a GL account code description,
Mhm.
right? So I don't really know what it means, but I'll be honest, I'm looking at supplies, maintenance and repairs, purchase services, rubbish removal, travel, which, I mean, travel is something that I'm sure is going to come back, right? And I understand that, but again, there is one line item though that I will say it's about 300 grand, 225 grand last year, and about 300 grand over budget this year, and I don't know what it corresponds to, but it's related to tuition for special ed students, I believe. And again, last year or in 22, it was budgeted for 827 grand. This year, we're looking at $1,075,000, right? And if I go back to 21, it was budgeted for 601,000. That's almost a 50% increase in the span of 2 years, right? And I see in 21, you were 225 grand over budget there. And as of right now I annualized your numbers through February. I know that can be hard to do because sometimes things aren't perfectly annualized. I show a $300,000 over budget there. So I don't know how that works. But like I said, I think when you really dig into it and you look at it, the money may possibly be there. Now, again, Mr. Anderson, I don't want to get into what that tuition is for. I don't know if you're good with it.
I'm happy to address that.
Okay.
That tuition is for students that are placed out of district by
Okay.
DC, in a few cases by the school, the Charahoe Regional School District. Charahoe actually itself puts out very few students because of CALA, but the state of Rhode Island, DCYF, walks into the district and says, we're taking Bobby out of his home. We're sending Bobby to Harmony Hill in Johnston. We're sending Bobby to Betty to the Bennington School in Vermont. And the school district has no control over that. So if DCYF walks in and says, we're taking kids out and we're shipping them to out-of-district placements because their home life is inappropriate, we have no choice under state law in that matter.
Sure.
And all it takes is one child. I'm dealing with a case in another district where the issue is an out-of-district placement, and the estimated cost for one child who is severely handicapped is $400,000 because it's a boarding school.
So how does a district budget for that?
That's
Now you're getting
And that is no reflection on any of you
Right.
sitting here or you trying to budget. That is how the
And
state.
the answer is that is a huge problem for every school district in Rhode Island. By contrast, in Massachusetts, the state picks up everything over a certain dollar amount, and it used to be around 50,000. The state picks up the rest. Not true in Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, the state pushes all the expenses down to the Charahoes, the Westerlies, the South Kingstowns. So the problem with budgeting is exactly what you indicate. Why are these numbers so low? All it takes is one or two kids, and you go from having a surplus in that account to a deficit. And it's, I do this little speech in all over the state.
Understood. I'd be interested to see what the surplus in that account is going back 5-10 years.
Well, and the tuition's up, like, to your point with the February, they're often paid at the end of the year.
Agreed. But again, like I said, I look back at the 20
understand.
budget, the 21 budget, and there was a surplus there, both years. It's only a 3-year comparative. So you can only look back so far. But yeah, that's to understand how a school district is supposed to budget for that.
It's a bad
Absolutely.
Rhode Island system.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Day and then Mr. Abbott. Mr. Day, you had your hand up.
As I understand it, with some people out there talking about cutting teachers, right now, this amount of money that you're advocating is not cutting any teachers.
Correct.
So let's get that, some of these people are confused, because we're talking about two different things. We're not talking about cutting any teachers, we're talking about on the piece of paper we got here, everything above the line of cutting teachers. So
Correct.
let's get that out there before people get any more confused than they are. You're talking $500,000. If you were talking cutting them teachers, we're talking $1 million, right?
Yes, just over $1
And
million.
change.
Yes,
What
correct.
the heck's a few $1,000s? We'll start talking millions. So, I mean, I just want to clarify that. We're not, what the superintendent is advocating and what I'm supporting is not touching the teachers, doing some of these other things here. And as I said earlier, and you understood this, we have the ability to transfer funds from one account to another. If we don't spend it in garbage remove, we can take $15,000 and put it towards something else. So we're not doing the ideal thing, but we're doing the best thing we can to keep this business, and this is a business.
Agreed. Agreed. Mr. Day, I agree with you 110%. Here's my thinking, and I'm trying to think further down the road, right? So you make these $500,000 in cuts now, right? And you send a budget referendum back to the towns, and God forbid it gets denied again. And now we're level funded, right? Why not show your residents, hey, look, we can make these cuts, get to level funding, and put that out to your residents right now and be done with it. Why go back to the well 2 and 3 times? Make the cuts in other places besides staffing.
No, you can't, not enough.
Move along, get a budget passed, and see where we stand. That's all I'm saying. Mr. Day, I agree. We should not be going after teaching positions right off the bat. But if you can show your residents that you're willing to make some further cuts everywhere in other places to keep staff on board, I think you buy yourself a lot of goodwill with the community.
Mr. Abbott, then Mr. Lagoria had his hand raised, and then who over here just had their hand
I
raised?
think Ryan did too.
Did Ryan, you have your hand raised? No? Okay. Okay, Mr. Abbott and then Mr. Lagoria.
From a historical perspective, I used to do this with DCYF. I retired in 2005. My practice was to just bill the school districts for the standard regular education rate. And no one ever complained about it. Obviously, it's different now.
Yeah, it is different. Thank you. Mr. Lagoria?
I just want to pick up on Mr. Day's point, which I think is really relevant. And it's not the whole answer. I think our public speaker makes a very good point. But I'm just not sure this document makes it clear what the process is at this point. And so you're suggesting $500,000 in cuts. If you have the document in front of you, that's all except the final 3 lines. So that's what the May 5th referendum would be. Correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent, but because they're all listed together, it doesn't appear that way. But the point is, because you can add them up and it'll come to 500,000 if you go through the math specialist.
Right.
Okay. So that's the 500,000 that's going to be proposed. The final 3 lines, and I'm not necessarily endorsing this, I'm just stating that factually, the final 3 lines are if it doesn't pass on May 5th. That's what the superintendent is suggesting be the next move when it goes to level funding. Okay. So what our public speaker is saying, instead of putting those 3 items out there, let's find something else. Okay. We can have that discussion. But I just think, so this, I think where you were going, Bill, is let's be clear that the proposed budget going forward on May 5th does not include cutting those teacher positions. But it does cut $500,000 down. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct. Ms. Chambers had her hand raised, and then Ms.
To Mr. Legari's point and to Mr. Day's point, that's really what I was suggesting is let's look at what we can cut and get the referendum passed so we do not have to go to level funding, which is going to start eating at our teachers. It's going to start requiring us to start reducing staff, okay? Thank you for saying that so clearly, and I hope I'm understood this time.
Ms. Macaruso, you have the floor.
So the format, I think part of why this
I know.
convoluted is because we proposed a format and I think we need to move to that.
Yeah.
Catherine suggested you just do an overview. If we could start taking line by line.
Sure.
Voting.
We need to do the work.
We can start doing the math.
Right.
And,
Right.
that's it. So
Right.
can we just
Sure,
get
start.
to that point? And if there's a controversial cut, we can hear the public, we can have the discussion.
Sure.
I just think we need to show the public we're going to start doing the work now.
Right.
Which is what you suggested about an hour ago.
Right. Okay, well, I have Catherine and Mr. Luzon. So Catherine,
Yeah, I make a motion to reduce the proposed budget by $50,000 for a technology shift.
So moved.
there's been a motion by Ms. Juicy and a second by Ms. Macaruso to reduce the budget by $50,000 due to a technology shift. I have this on the floor for conversation. Anybody? Nope. Take it to a vote.
There's
Oh,
somebody from the
I'm
audience,
sorry.
though.
Do you have a comment on the technology shift?
I have a comment on the general budget.
No. No.
Well,
Before we started talking about the technology and bringing that up, Catherine.
can you
my
wait?
hand was up.
Can you wait till can we go through these cuts and then you can have a
I would like to make my public comment and other people before we start going to the cuts and voting on it, yes.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, point of
Yeah,
order.
yeah,
Ma'am,
thank you.
I'm just saying,
We have
we
a
have an
motion.
open.
We have we do.
motion
We have
second.
an open
We're just gonna
motion.
take a vote,
Just
and
as
then
one item.
after this
Just as
one
one
item.
My hand was up before you took the.
We'll take a vote.
Yes, ma'am, I
and then
We'll take a
understand. Just let
vote.
us close this out.
Hurry
and-
up for public comment before you made the motion to vote, Catherine.
Well, I apologize for that. So can we just make this one vote and then you can have your, okay, thank you. Yes.
Before we vote
No,
though,
come on.
Well, no, no.
We already have it.
What? Okay, we need to, right, okay. So those in favor of cutting $50,000 for technology shift, please, who's in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Nays, recusals, or abstentions? No. Okay, we have a $50,000 cut. Now, if you have a comment, I have to let school committee go first and then you have your comment.
no, that's fine. I just want to know if there will be discussion. I know that Mrs. Picard did a great job of giving an overview, but can we discuss each line also?
Yes, once we
as
make the
we go
motion
through?
and second
Okay.
it, then we
All right,
can
thank you.
discuss it. Ma'am, you can have your piece.
My name is Christine Austin. I'm a longtime resident of Hopkinton, parent of 2 children in the middle school, former teacher of Charahoe District for 12 years. I just want to say that the public has spoken, and I think a huge part of the problem is that even though right now you're proposing the $500,000 cut and you're not talking about teachers, you're saying the bottom line is if the vote goes no, you're going to start cutting ESP positions, teacher positions, playgrounds, all things that affect the children. My question is, why has nothing been proposed to cut from the top? There is not one cut for an administrator. How many deans do we need? How many assistants do we need? How many administrative assistants do we need? There's not one cut from the top down. You're talking about Donna Chambers' substitute pay. You're talking about a difference in $35 a day for substitutes. We're talking about millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're talking about ESP of the year and teacher of the year going to a conference. That's about $250 per person. So that's $500. Where are the cuts from the top? The big budget items, the administrative salary in this district is insane. The amount of administrators in this district for the amount of students that we have is insane. That's where the money is. That's where the money is. So why is it always that a playground's going to get cut? A teacher assistant who makes $25,000, $30,000 a year is going to get cut. A teacher is going to get cut. Where are the cuts from the top? That's my question. And that, I think, is the general public census. And that is why we're voting no on this budget. That's it.
That's interesting. Yeah, no. Yes, go ahead.
Also, what needs to be cut is the lawyer who fights the parents who have special needs when they know better than the special education director what their children need. They get the outside evaluations and they get far over all the time. And for the superintendent, her salary is a lot more than my husband, who has worked 30 years for the federal government at the Naval Undersea Warfare Center. And he's the head mechanical engineer and the chief purchaser.
I'm sorry. Did you have a comment?
No, I
Donna?
just, I would like to know where you want this administration
No,
cut,
Donna.
because I think, anyway, don't even get me started. on
Donna,
this.
okay. Come on, don't. Thank you, Miss. We,
Slippery slope.
we,
Madam
ma'am,
Chair.
we did hear you would like us to cut from, I know she did, and I,
Okay, and I heard you.
Donna, please,
I heard
Miss
it.
Chambers.
That's all.
Yes, Miss
Yes,
Juicy.
thank you. I make a motion to cut a 0.5, or actually cut $89,597 from the budget because we're moving a 0.5 CMS Dean to ESSER 3 funds.
Second.
There's been a motion by Ms. Juicy and a second by Mr. Callahan to move a 0.5, Charahoe Middle School Dean to ESSA funds at the amount of $89,597. I open this up for discussion.
We need a second.
No, we did get a second, Mr. Callahan.
Thank you.
Sorry. Any discussion? Yes.
Well, I think that we should consider the mental health needs. We just applauded a student earlier tonight, and it's not the student's labor to attend to the mental health of the student population here. And so I would vote against moving this down.
So you don't want to move it to the ESSER funds. You want to,
I want to keep it.
well, we are going to keep it. It's just the fund, it's going to be funded through ESSA instead of,
But I think that
okay, as long as you understand that, that's fine.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So you, Mr. Day.
Yes, we're not removing this position. We're just,
Right.
we're funding it from a different pocket.
Correct.
So let's keep this in mind when we make these motions, that top thing is just either removing it or moving it someplace. So we're robbing Peter to pay Paul,
Right.
but, and we may have to pay for this next budget process. But right
Right.
now, the way that the economy is and the way the voters are, we've got to do something this year.
Yeah, and I just I don't want to move it
Okay,
down the road.
that's okay. That's your prerogative. Any other comments or questions?
I just skipped them.
Okay, well, take that to a vote. So there's been a motion and a second to move the 0.5, Charahoe Middle School Dean to the ESSER 3 funds at a amount of $89,597. I'll take that to a vote. Those in favor? Okay, those opposed? We have 2 oppositions. Any recusals or abstentions? Okay, that cut does pass. Thank you. Ms. Juicy, are you going to continue?
I'll just keep
Thank
going.
you.
I make a motion to reduce the proposed budget by $68,473. Reduce capital investment, remove and move to fiscal year ending 24.
I second.
There's been a motion by Ms. Juicy and a second by Ms. Chambers to reduce the capital investment by $68,473 from the budget and move it to FY '24. Any yes, Ms. Macrusa, do you have a comment or question?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So, from my notes, was that the Ashway Playground, the Richmond fence, and what was the other one?
The CTC compressor.
Oh, that, we have that. We just found other ways to pay for it.
Director Auth did it through a grant.
Okay. And so you're proposing that we move it to the next year. So it's not a removal.
It's a
move?
transfer, yes.
Is the fence a safety issue?
It is. The issue is that if the rotary from the town comes too close, we would have to remove it and put it back up. So rather than putting it on before the rotary is completed, we're going to let the rotary be completed and then add the fence.
Last time I walked by Ashway, which there was a crater.
That's happening for spring break. It's being
Okay, so
fenced.
this would not
No.
prevent the, okay.
No.
All right, I'm gonna think about this. Thank you.
Any other? Did you? Okay, so I'll take that to a vote. So we are considering, there's been a motion and a second to reduce the capital investment by $68,473. Those in favor? Okay. Those opposed? We got one opposition, Ms. Macruso. Abstentions or recusals? No, okay. Okay. Ms. Juicy, do you?
Yes,
wanna
I
proceed?
make a recommendation to reduce one late bus or a bus, thus reducing the budget by $64,800.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion by Ms. Juicy, a second by Ms. Macaruso to reduce one late bus / regular bus by six, and so that would save the budget $64,800. Any discussion or consideration on that one? Okay, those in favor? Taking a bus off. Any oppositions, recusals, abstentions? That passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, Catherine's still thinking.
Okay. I make a motion to reduce a 0.5 TA at CMS, reducing the budget by $21,081.
Second.
There's been a motion by Ms. Juicy, a second by Mr. Callahan to reduce the 0.5 TA at CMS. The budget would be saved by $21,081. Open for discussion? Yes.
And this is actually a vacant position that we would not fill. There's not a person in this position that we would be removing.
Correct. Did I see a hand in the public for a comment? Okay. So for those of you who didn't hear, it's a vacant position that hasn't been filled, so it wouldn't be filled. Okay. Any other questions or discussions? Those in favor? Any opposition? Recusals, abstentions? And that passed unanimously.
I
Yes,
make a
Mrs.
recommendation to reduce the substitute allocation by $24,500.
Second.
There's been a motion by Ms. Juicy and a second by Mr. Callahan to reduce the substitute allocation, which $24,500. Yes.
I actually have a question.
Yeah, I do too. So
So is this reducing the amount we're paying substitutes, or
No.
this is reducing the amount of substitutes that we anticipate hiring?
correct.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Chambers.
And to follow up on that question, we increased the pay of the substitutes.
We did, I was originally 85, 80, and then it's 120 now.
Yeah, and we're still not quite competitive, so are you still?
Some people have used ESSER fundings, which will end. We had a grant, and then there was a grant last year, if you recall, that we accessed, so we were able to get it to about 140. And others use it for ESSER. We didn't get as much as some of those districts, but you could use it.
But let me just ask as a follow-up.
But they're also not getting more substitutes than we are with the increase.
Okay, but you feel comfortable that we will have adequate
I
funding?
don't.
I know, how do you know? I know. Anyway, okay, all right, I'm okay with that.
Okay, no?
She asked it.
Okay. Ms. Legori?
So that line item is assigned to the middle school? Is,
The
at least
substitute
according to
allocation?
here, it says row 712 for the reduction. Is that meant to be assigned to the middle school or across the board?
No, it's a district-wide line.
Yes.
It's
ma'am?
it's like
Okay.
every, because of the uniform chart of accounts that it's required by the state to follow, it has to be like a rate for every school, but those numbers can shift as long as the overall is district, depending on where the subs go.
Now, did you have something more to say to
Yeah,
that?
we assigned it to that line because it happens to be a larger line, but
Yeah, it is the largest line.
it'll be assigned wherever they go,
Right.
as superintendent said.
Mrs. Luzon, please. You have to come to the podium, sorry. That's okay.
Anne Marie Luzon, Charlestown. My question is, are these the building subs, so you will not have building subs?
No, that's not the building subs.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Any more questions on that line item? Any more discussion? Take it to a vote. Those in favor? Any opposition? Abstentions or recusals? That was unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes, Ms. Juicy?
I make a motion to move a math specialist to ESSER three funding, reducing the budget by $120,607.
Second.
There's a motion by Ms. Juicy, a second by Mr. Callahan to move the math specialist services to ESSER three funds at the amount of $120,607. I'll open this up for discussion. Yes, Ms. Chambers?
I would like to hear a little more explanation of that. Is that the new curriculum specialist services?
No.
It's outside services that we're paying for?
No, so this position, we already have district math specialists.
Yes.
So we're moving one of our district math specialists into ESSER. We were going to look to get 3 additional ones to support elementary, middle, and high overall, based on the highest level of need that we have is mathematics. And
Yes, I
that
know that.
support. So instead of getting 2 additional, we'll have 3 additional, we'll have 2 additional and maintain 1 with ESSER.
Okay, so I understand this, okay, before I vote on it, because you're saying that we would, $120,000.
So the
is
federal.
For how many specialists?
1.
One.
That's what's tell her compensation. plus
So
fringe.
it's compensation plus fringe, and when you have money in a federal grant, the retirement percentage is higher.
Okay.
For example, last year it was 26%, and this year it's 28% due to the retirement shift.
And
That's
con-
required per the federal law.
Okay, and
Different than the operating budget would look like.
And considering the focus on math this year with the curriculum, the tension, all.
Well, and our data.
And your data, okay, your data, I'm gonna vote against this, so, yeah.
Did you have your hand still raised, Miss?
No, it's not. Thank you. I just want to clarify that was for one.
Do you want to explain why that's 120 again?
Yeah, it's the fringe and salary, and the federal money's, it's 27 change percent based on the requirement.
Let me
Yes.
just ask you.
Okay, wait a minute.
You're-
Wait,
Wait a
Miss-
second, it's a follow-up to my question.
Ms. Macruso had her hand up.
Follow-up. You're comfortable with this, with knowing what the needs are for math? You're comfortable with this move?
Yes.
All right, all right.
We'll come up with anything, but we will,
Miss-
works the plan.
Ms. Macruso, I'm sorry, it's your turn.
So we're keeping a math specialist, changing the funding source. I know you well enough to know that you're already thinking about the next budget. Where do you think we'll be able to recover this if we do this now? Because I don't want to have the conversation.
What I'm going to be
that we
looking
don't
at, so
have
for example,
this.
the hope is that with the implementation of curriculum and the progress of students, that in essence, we will be able to think differently about the allocation of the math specialists and prioritize needs based on that, and maybe need a reduction if we're getting kids back to where they need to be.
I see. So you have a plan for maintaining this position or closing the gaps?
Correct.
Okay, I'm good there.
Mr. Abbott and then Mr. Luzon. Mr. Abbott?
You mentioned enhanced retirement costs.
Yeah, it's the federal requirement for the retirement.
Where does that money go? Would that show up in the employees' retirement?
It would be
account?
fringe. It would be it's part of their fringe requirement. So you budget, so for example, you give the salary. So based on the salary cost, and then you calculate the 27% points.
How would
on
that sync with the state system on the teachers here in the state retirement system?
Yes.
So would extra money go into the state accounts or the teachers account? How would that play out?
No, just the requirement of what we have to, the way we have to calculate the federal side versus if we're using operating budgets.
So there's actually no increase in any account? Okay.
Mr. Luzon?
I'm not a proponent of kicking the can down the road. I'm really not a proponent of that, but I realize this is a unique circumstance, and I also realize the fact that we have something that we could take funding from to these cans down the road. You know, years back, we kicked the can down the road for Ashaway School's windows. For 7 years, we kicked it down the road. And for 7 years, we also paid higher utility costs in that school because they were old windows. So yes, I don't look forward to finding funding for this in the future, but right now, it is what it is. So that's just my opinion. So, and if you can get chance to regurgitate categorical transportation funding, that, like Catherine said, that is such a big ticket item for the state to promise us something and to maybe deliver nothing. Or the whole thing. We don't know.
Yeah, Representative Kenny is taking an absolute lead in that work. Like I said, we spoke directly to one another. He felt very good about the conversation he had directly with the governor, directly with the Senate leadership, as well as the representative leadership. But again, the check isn't signed. There's a lot of goodwill, but we won't know until the budget is passed. But what he said to me was, it looks like he would not need to request the amendment, that it would go through the actual budget, which is what they were talking about, which would mean we would hopefully hear sooner than later. But again, that's still best case scenario would be end of May, which typically doesn't happen. But
And what's the total dollar value on that, please?
it's over 500,000. Do you have it in front of you?
Yeah.
The transportation.
Just be careful.
I want to say
Yeah,
it's
I know.
like 529.
We have to be careful because there's a motion on the floor
Yeah,
specifically
Oh,
for,
That's right.
yeah, you're digressing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa.
Do you want
So,
that answer?
Just hold.
Yeah.
Holding.
Going back to this.
There's a motion on it. So this is
Yeah,
the same
this,
question.
this is a motion
Math
to
specialist.
the math specialist.
I got it.
Okay.
I got it.
Just, I'm trying to, I know.
All right, but again, it's, because I'm really conflated about this vote, okay? If we do not vote on this, we will have to find the funding next year, along with, if this goes to ESSER funding, this particular position to maintain the quality of our math programs and to make sure that they increase the quality of the math programs, we would have to find funding in the next year's budget, okay? Along with professional development and all the other things that we're spending through the ESSER funding. So it's not just this one position that will have to be finding funding next year. It's everything else that ESSER is funding that we'll have to come up with money for next year too. So that's
Thank you.
my position.
I think Mr. Day's next. Yes, you're Mr. Day.
I mentioned this before. We have transferred over $800,000 this school year. We have the flexibility to find that we budgeted, as John said earlier, we budgeted a out-of-district student somewhere because DCYF said we had to do it, and that person moved out of the district. That's a windfall for us. Let's not nitpick this to the point where we're going to lose this budget vote. I think we need to keep focusing that we're kicking the can down the road, but we've also never run a deficit. We never had to go back to the voters for additional money in all the years that Charo has been here. And we've had some tough budget years and stuff like that. We have a superintendent that we hired. We all voted for this woman. And now we're turning around and finding ways to turn around and tell her she doesn't know what the hell she's doing. Let's support the superintendent and let's hope that the taxpayers will support us and pass the budget as she's proposing.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to move the math specialist services to ESSER 3 funds at the amount of $120,607. Taking this to, whoops, go ahead. Ms.
Do the ESSER funds meet the criteria for maintenance of effort?
Yeah, I know you've been looking at this, Mr. Draper.
The ESSER funds do not require maintenance of effort. They require maintenance of equity, which is different, and we did examine that.
Okay.
Okay, good. It's a good question. Okay, I'm taking this to a vote, though. Those in favor to move that, to ESSER? Oh, anybody against? No. Abstention or, yes, Mr. Day, you were, yeah. Did you vote? You voted for it, right, sir?
Yes, I was.
Okay,
I-
you want to go on to the next one? Okay, thank
Well,
you.
uh,
Oh, yes, it was unanimous.
There's a couple of things that
Yeah, there are a couple of
Catherine?
motions I didn't make.
Right.
didn't make, so I'm gonna step in here and
Okay,
move that we moved $80,000 from reduced labor addition.
mhm.
That's my
Second.
motion.
Okay, there was a motion by Mr. Day and a second by Mr. Callahan. And that's the original 80,000 that we had put back in, and we're reducing it again. Reduce labor addition and the amount of $80,000. I'll open that up to discussion. Anybody does anyone understand? No? Okay. Okay, so that was in one of the last time. Do you want to explain that?
How does that impact?
So the $80,000 was placed back into the budget at the last school committee meeting for any staffing needs that may arise. Or if it have to be two ESPs or one teacher if class enrollment increased.
So it was like a just in case?
Yes, it was a just in case.
Okay.
That's a good way of putting it, just in case, yes.
All right.
Ms. Chambers?
Okay, and that's what you said, just in case, Lisa?
It's just in case I was.
Okay. So, but this money addresses the question of the
Actually,
elementary
may
school.
I clarify, Donna? It was
Yeah.
also, my apologies.
Yeah.
For elementary.
Yes.
Elementary,
Yes.
Sorry.
okay. So if there is a need for keep maintaining smaller elementary classes, that's the money that we have voted, that we decided we needed
Mhm.
to maintain smaller classes in the elementary level, correct?
So I understand it to be different than that, so you can certainly tell me if we aren't reducing any of the existing staff, then it's still just in case money because so that that's not my interpretation of that. If it's just in case money, then it has nothing to do with maintaining the classrooms because we're not reducing any of the positions that are in here. I don't think
And may I
that
add
that's how it is
something?
right
Yes.
now.
If we make this cut, we now have, we reduced the budget 519,000.
But we reduced 0 staff.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
That's without field trips too.
I asked Ned to check, we would be at
Does not include field
519,000 with this additional cut.
With
When you say
With the- with the
additional.
one on the-
This 80,000 that's on the table right now.
Thank you.
Good, Lisa?
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? No, Mr. Day made the motion and Mr. Callahan seconded to reduce the labor addition by $80,000. Those in favor? And Mr. Abbott walked out, so. Yeah, thank you. I guess that's a recusal.
I just put.
Absent. Okay, Mr. Day, you have the floor.
Well, I'll try this last one.
Yes.
Probably, folks might be comfortable with that, but anyway,
Yeah.
$50,000 for field trips, remove field trips.
I'll second it for discussion purposes.
Okay, so there's been a motion and by Mr. Day and a second by Mr. Callahan to remove field trips and get the amount of $50,000. Yes, Miss.
So can you explain, does this mean children do not go on field trips anymore? Explain to me what this means.
So we would, with this amount, we would keep our K to 5 required in the policy.
Okay.
If you wanted to cut that, we would have to change policy. And it would provide the like the Skills USA, the trips that are, the CTC related that they have to go to.
Okay, so follow-up question. Today I went on a field trip where we caught a bunch of bugs down by the turf fields. It was rained the whole time, but it was pretty fantastic and a great learning experience. Would that be cut if we cut this 50,000?
Possibly, yes. We're going to go 50,000.
Thank you. Then I
Total.
won't support that. Thank you.
You said you will not.
I will not support that.
Yeah, I absolutely
Okay,
do not
sorry, Ms.
support that. That's what
Excuse
you all just said about not affecting the children with these cuts, and that directly affects the children and their experiences, and some children in this district don't really get to do much at all. So those experiences are priceless.
Thank you. Ms. Macruso, you had a comment.
So,
Yeah.
won't support the motion. Last time this was on the table, Clay Johnson, I think Catherine and I gave up our stipends rather than take away field trip money. We got ourselves into a whole lot of trouble for doing it. And we
Sure
just
did.
got those back. So if that's where this goes, that's where my motion
Right.
goes. So I would hope that the team goes with it. We're not there. We're not there.
Okay.
Thank you.
She's saying we're not there. I was going to say I support that too.
Yeah.
Give up our stipends.
Mr.
I say regardless.
Yeah,
If
so,
nothing else, that's a show
Okay,
of
Dr.
goodwill.
yeah, so I'm in line with Gary here, but my understanding is we cannot vote on our stipend, right? It's an illegal position for us to take, John?
No.
problem that you have with regard to the stipend is that if you ever decide to put it back in, then you can't put it back in because you're voting to increase your own salary.
Right.
That's where the problem comes in.
How did it come back in this time? It just went for a 4-year cycle, right?
That's correct.
So if
So
I,
you predicted, in other words, when you finally voted for it, you voted for it not to take effect for 4 years, which by that time, theoretically, every one of you had to run, well, not theoretically, everyone had to run for reelection. So it wasn't affecting you personally.
okay, so
So if you voted, or if you decide to put that as a budget cut, then you're not going to put it back for 4 years.
So, all right. Okay, I'm not gonna look at anybody, don't yell at me, but we have a motion on the floor, so I'll wait until this clears up. But thank you for clarifying, thank you. I will not be supporting this, I wanted to talk it through, but thank you.
I think, okay, I'm going to take this to a vote. Those in favor of cutting the $50,000? I think that was unanimous.
I told you I didn't think it was going.
Yeah, I know, but you tried,
No,
Mr.
no,
Day.
that's-
Unanimous. Does
Okay.
anybody have any
Any recusals
recusals,
or
abstentions, or anything?
I
All
want
opposed,
I want
okay.
to be equal with the superintendent's recommendation.
We appreciate that. Yes, Dr. Callahan.
How much is
Oh.
our stipend?
Just one sec, okay, we have them, okay, thank you.
I believe it's just over 24,000. I have to look it up.
Okay.
That's total, in case anyone's wondering.
Yeah.
That's
for all of us.
Sorry about that. I can feel that in the room.
So we had done it in the past, and I think it was for about 4 years.
I'm okay.
Yeah. Especially if it's gonna go.
You're going through a lot. Donna's going through a lot of pencils tonight.
Love pencils.
Sorry about that. I didn't set it aside.
Oh, it's the.
If you could give me just a minute to find it. I'm sorry about that.
You want to let Ms. Dinsmore go? Yeah, I guess, Ms. Dinsmore, do you want to go while Ned is looking up? Thank you. Thank you for waiting.
I'm Louise Dinsmore, resident of Richmond, Rhode Island. Thank you for your hard work that you're putting in this evening. I have to say, I'm a Richmond resident, but I'm also the chairperson of the Richmond Republican Town Committee. And I was a part of a group that mobilized at the grassroots level to vote down this last budget. And I'm going to tell you why. First of all, I know that it's outside the purview of this committee, but to give the school administration and the school committee not one, not two, but 3 opportunities to submit a budget to the general public is insulting to the taxpayers and to the voters. There's no financial incentive for you to bring your most fiscally responsible budget to the taxpayers the first time out of the gate. So that's one of the reasons why people mobilized to shoot down this budget. Secondly, I'm also really flabbergasted why not one of the members of the school committee is considering or asking the administration for cuts at the top of the totem pole. This is no disrespect to the administrators. You work very hard. But during these economic times, the school committee should be asking for cuts at the top of the totem pole. And I just, really wanted to say that we do not want to see teacher positions cut. Absolutely not. We don't want to see field trips cut. We don't want the student experience changed. But you have to look at everything, and everything is everything. I've gone through those 49 pages, 69 pages, whatever it is, of line item by line item by line item. There's nothing on here about efficiencies in spending, working with vendor contracts, possibly to rework vendor contracts. There's nothing on here about that. So please, when you're considering these cuts, we don't want cuts that's going to change the student experience. That's not right. The teachers don't deserve to lose their jobs. That's not right either. But everybody during these economic times are cutting back. So I would ask that the responsible thing to do is to look at everything from the top down. Thank you.
Yes, please come forward.
Hi, my name is Betsy Alvarez. I'm speaking tonight as a parent. For most of you here, you know that I'm also a teacher, but I'm talking as a parent right now. I just want to kind of just talk about our administrators. We work together as a team, parents and administrators. I have spoken with many administrators about my children, and they've always been available. They work long hours. And I don't think the public really knows how much our administrators from the top all the way down work. And I'm not just talking about the past couple of years. My son is in 7th grade. I have a a second grader, and a student that has recently graduated. And the whole time, even through conflicts, okay, we've all worked together, parents and administrators. They are a part of the team. It's not just the teachers. So I understand this budget is very, everyone has strong feelings on it, but you guys are doing the work. Everyone's having conversation, but I wasn't going to speak tonight. I do have other comments to make, but it's not appropriate for this setting. But administrators are needed, and we are bare bones when it comes to some of these even lower level administrators. And I just don't think the public really understands the makeup of our schools. It has changed over the last 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Chambers.
Yeah,
Mr. Day, do
I
you have a hand up?
appreciate your saying that. I would find it insulting to think about asking anyone to cut their salaries or cut a position. What I have observed is this administration works incredible hours to do the work that they are doing to keep us on top of this district. I would not even consider cutting 1 cent from the administration staff. I think we're lucky to have them. These are competitive positions. I think many of our administrators could go other places for better salaries. And I would think, I'm going to repeat, it would be an insult to them to even consider that. I never gave that a thought.
Mr. Day? Yes.
I've been around a long time. A lot of people say I've been around too long, but the fact of the matter is that the staff that we have here now is no larger than when I started on the school committee. Matter of fact, it is less because we did have 2 assistant principals at the high school. I remember, if my memory serves me correct at the time. What a lot of the individuals don't understand is that there are so many state regs and rules that we have to abide by that a superintendent alone cannot physically or mentally do the job. And it goes the same for the principals in the high school. We have so many supposedly guidelines, but they're really impediments to do the job that these administrators have to do. And if we were overstaffed, I would be the first one to tell you that, because I think that one of the things that I've been able to do over the years is tell people the truth, whether they liked it or not. And I'm telling you right now, we're not overstaffed. We don't have any more staff in here than we did 20 some years ago when I started. George has been around a while. Another person had been around, and I think they'll agree with me. We have not increased the staff to the point where we're overstaffed in spite of what, a lot of school districts, if you look at some of these other school districts, they just turn around and change the classification of these people, so it doesn't look like they've got 3 assistant superintendents and 4 of these and 5 of these. If you look at it, it doesn't jump out at you. Right now, what we have here at Charahoe is the same as we've had since practically the beginning of time here. So I take exception to anybody that thinks that we're overstaffed here. And I challenge them to prove that we're overstaffed instead of making statements that they can't support.
Yes, Ms. Dinsmore.
So, and I respect your feedback, Bill. I appreciate that. We've had a lot of good discussions on the budget and a number of other items, so I really do appreciate that. What I would say is that in these economic times, perhaps not necessarily cutting an administrative position, but perhaps looking at level funding their position. If we're all going to be asked to make sacrifices, then in these economic times, sacrifices really should be reviewed across the board. That's my point. Thank you.
Mr. Yes, Mr. Luzon.
You know, an election or a vote is a roll of the dice. Okay? You folks, kudos to you. You came out in force. You persuaded a lot of people to vote your cause. But believe it or not, half of this room tonight thinks the total opposite you do. And maybe 10 to 12% of the total population come out and told us to shoot it down. Some of us have a belief that the other side's going to come out the next time. That's the roll of the dice. I have the floor at the moment, sir. Okay? You're right, but we have the luxury. It's a luxury of having more than one shot. And if you were sitting up here, you'd be taking advantage of the same luxury to promote what you want. Now, I believe in what we've done tonight. Evidently, you don't. So, you know what? I know that people in Charlestown told me on a 2-to-1 margin that they wanted the budget. I represent Charlestown. Thank you.
Ms. Juicy,
I'm going to defer to Christine because then I'm kind of moving the conversation. So
Yes.
go for it.
Quickly, Charlestown taxes and what you have in Charlestown compared to Hopkinton is night and day.
May I respond to that, please, Chair?
Please do.
May I
Well,
respond?
why do we need to?
Listen. I moved here from Narragansett over 35 years ago. My wife, who's sitting right there, and I moved here. We chose Charlestown primarily because of the taxes. Now, I have fought for good budgets, and I've fought for taking into consideration my two northern neighbors, okay, and their impact of their taxes. But I've also, for 35 years, have watched my two northern neighbors do nothing to address their problems. Nothing. So, excuse me, I'm talking at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, but and then we're digressing off of this too. This is not budget.
Well, we've digressed
So-
the whole night.
Well, no, we haven't. I've been trying not to, or trying you guys not to. Yes, Catherine.
Yep. So I think at this point, I'd like if we could take a recess as the superintendent and the director of finance had asked for, if you
Right.
still need that, so you can recalculate.
Wait a minute.
And then let us know.
I gotta go back.
Oh,
Okay.
no?
Was,
Not yet?
no, I think, do you want to put your motion forward on this? Because I know you asked a question and,
Yeah, what's the number, Ned?
and then we
24,250. It's row 938 of
and
section
then we
4
can
of the
take a
budget.
break, Catherine. Okay.
Make a motion to cut the budget $24,250.
Second.
You have to say the what?
Sorry, school committee stipends.
Second.
Then we got a second. So there's been a motion by Dr. Callen, motion by Dr. Callen, a second by, it was Mr. Legore, to reduce the budget by $24,250.
$250.
$250 for the school committee stipends. And now open that to discussion. Catherine and then Mr. Day.
No, Lisa.
Lisa, sorry. Oh, sorry, Lisa.
I know, you need to read.
Yeah, I know.
So one of the positive impacts of this, Ryan, to your motion,
Sorry.
is when we receive our 1/12 of that, and then taxes are taken out, we are really all taking home about $1,300. When we put it back into the budget for the kids, they get the full
Full amount.
$2,000.
But that's a
Right.
good point.
Right,
It's
so
very good
really,
point.
I just want everyone to think about it, because this is how we discussed it last time when we did this, the last cycle. It actually gives the kids more money than we get to take home when you put it back in. So I just wanted everyone to understand that piece, because it was pretty persuasive for me last time.
Mr. Day?
This motion would impact potentially 8 new individuals in this election cycle. We're having problems getting people to step up now. The town councils, they don't do half the work that we're doing. Let's be realistic about it. And they have no problem in keeping their stipends. I don't know how anybody in the audience feels about us volunteering our time. I volunteer so much, I don't know whether I'm getting a stipend or whether I'm just volunteering somewhere. So it's not an issue with me, but I'm just suggesting that we think about the impact of future members that might be interested in stepping up and being a member of the school committee. So I think it's kind of short-sighted, from the respect that the people are not beating the door down to take this beating that we've been taking the past few years. And I don't mean any disrespect to anybody that comes in here and has issues with us, but it's been a tough few years, and I just think it's setting a poor example for the future of the district.
Ms. Chambers and then Ms.
Yes,
Luzon. Oh,
I believe that for those 8 people that Mr. Day are referring to who are wishing to run for the school committee, if the $1,300 is incentive, I'm not sure if we want them on the school committee.
I never said that.
No.
Excuse me?
All right.
Okay, guys.
Excuse me.
Everybody take a breath.
All right.
Let's be,
Anyway.
let's,
In other words, I don't believe we're here for the stipend. If you're here for the stipend, you're here, I believe, for the wrong reasons. At the same time, I believe, and I will absolutely support this, even though I live in Charlestown, I'm not wealthy, trust me. However, I think that this is showing good faith effort, that we are willing to put our money back into the budget so that we can support, so that you will support this budget for the sake of the kids. I think it's great that all the money goes directly back to the kids. Perfect.
Mr. Luzon?
I said the same thing Mr. Day said 2 years ago. And here's a novel idea. Instead of impacting 8, how about just donate it yourself? Take the $2,000, see if John says you don't have to pay taxes, and just give it back yourself.
You do have to pay
That way,
taxes.
that way, let me finish. I'm just talking, sir.
Please,
Well, then why don't you get elected?
please,
So the point is, donate it back yourself.
your recommendation would be that the people would make a donation back. Thank you, Mr. Luzon.
I will simply say, I served for 11 years on the school committee in Pawtucket, and I did not take my salary while I was in Pawtucket. And the concern was that it raised tax issues. I didn't worry about that particular issue, but I am concerned that if you take the salary and then donate it back, that you will be liable for the taxes. If you're going to do it, the cleaner way to do it is to support the motion, as opposed to taking it and then giving it back. You will have to pay. My belief is you will have to pay taxes at that point. So you're making a contribution to the federal government, not to the children of Charahoe. But that's your policy decision to make.
Mr. Liguori?
So when I ran for the school committee, I had no idea there was a stipend. But that doesn't mean it couldn't be an important financial contribution to certain families. So I don't want to disregard that. I also didn't realize I was going to get $1,000 MacBook Air, which I also think is excessive, and would suggest that if we're going to make this, let's make it clean and give back the $1,000 MacBook Airs, and that goes from $24,000 to $36,000 a year. roughly? I mean, I know this isn't an annual expense, but it seems excessive. That it's nice and it was a surprise, but I have another one just like it sitting.
We have to keep the
So good
information
at
of school not in our.
So I would suggest we
Yeah, I was gonna say.
amend the motion.
Yeah, okay. Can I make a comment before? Because I think some of the issues are keeping school-related concerns on a personal computer.
Yes.
But I'm
We
not
could
sure about
downgrade the
that.
equipment, but we
That
would
would-
still need,
yeah, and-
security and that
Right.
sort of thing.
And they're leased, so it's not necessarily, not a clean.
I would go a little further.
we
say
don't own
could
them.
consider downgrading all of the technology. But that's another.
Yeah, I also would express concerns that using home computers may also raise APRA issues.
We could certainly downgrade. I don't think we use these for anything more than accessing our folders.
And school-related.
Yeah, and,
No,
and
no,
we repurpose the
Chromebook.
MacBook, so even when they're out of life and we have students who can purchase and things like that, but it's not
You can
necessarily
still make
clean.
you can still make the motion, Ms. LaGoria. It's not like I'm saying you can't or anything, just if you still
To
want
downgrade, yeah.
Yeah, so if you want to downgrade. Yeah.
So Lisa, did you want to?
No, I'm
No.
talking to myself.
So I would amend the motion that we
Okay.
also add to this
No.
that we downgrade our.
Okay.
I would
No.
vote them separate.
Yeah,
They're two
the
different
two,
things,
yeah.
and
Okay.
people might not want to vote for both of them
Right.
together, so I would keep them separate.
Okay, so are we ready to vote on the on the stipends? Okay, any more comments? Okay. Those in favor of reducing the budget by 24,250, am I correct on that?
Yes.
To reduce, and to eliminate the stipends, take a vote. Okay. Any against? A recusal? Abstention?
Abstaining.
Okay, 2 abstentions. Thank you very much. Ms. LaGoria? Motion to,
Yeah, I would
Oh.
make a motion.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Could
Yeah.
I just provide some advice?
okay,
If we could maybe cut the rough value, if we figure $1,000 a piece, cut it in half, and then add it to the technology shift, we could amend the technology shift line. That way I can work it out with Sean as to what the actual value would be.
Because they'd be repurposed for students.
is that okay?
So I guess that brings up a bigger question in terms of the MacBooks in general to the student body. And I know this come up before, but what's keeping us from going to say the Chromebook? for
So
the
there
student
is a technology committee that meets based on these decisions, and Sean Cole leads that team with teachers and students and parents and community members. And the review of the Mac, why it didn't move to Chromebooks, was based on the Adobe software, specific software on our CTE pathways. We would still have to purchase Apple for specific programs that doesn't alleviate the cost. So it actually was based even on the Chromebooks now, and what we have
So
to
we
put
would
on the
need enough
Chromebooks, it's almost
Apples
equal now.
For everyone? I mean,
No, we'd have to make sure certain individuals had software available, plus the Chromebook increased based on what we have to put on. And I'm probably looking at Eric because he could probably explain this a whole lot better than I can with the IT. But overall, when they did the analysis, it's not much of a cost savings any longer based on what the Chromebooks need for security, IT, WISP, all of those. And the Apple provides the opportunity for any pathway. The arts is an example, CTE, construction tech, engineering. There's a list of reasons why, and I can actually present that to the school committee for further review. That committee just recently met again for the analysis of that.
Yes,
Are we on to,
take a break.
no,
Oh.
I have questions.
Okay, please.
Ned, how many open head counts do we have?
Open head counts?
Yeah, open positions that we haven't filled.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I'd have to check with Kristen.
Are you,
'Cause I know-
any for certified, non-certified?
The whole thing.
You're right. For certified, there's not many. Like, for example, the position on here for the CHS CMS is vacant currently.
Mhm.
And for certified, I believe that's it.
I believe
For-
we've got 3 in custodial.
Custodial and a few
Mhm.
TAs. I have to, to
Okay.
this point, I may have some, hold on. Definitely custodial.
Yes, Ms. Macruso. Lisa, got it right this time.
Complete custodial.
Does that be a full answer?
Yes, ma'am.
So before I go to break, the reduction and the cost of living, the 230, is that an example of what Mr. Champa was talking about, an over budget? Or does that have an impact on staff? Can you explain that one to me again?
Yeah, Ned's going.
Yeah, okay, I don't understand it, so I just want to understand it better.
So maybe the general way I could explain it would be, we have two significant unions, the support union and the teachers union, that are up for negotiations. So we planned for a certain amount of increase, and that would impact that increase.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Ms.
And we have not voted on that at all tonight.
No,
So we're
that's a
keeping
whole,
that in.
that's a whole other challenge.
All right.
Ms. Juicy?
If everybody is comfortable, I'd like to ask for how long do you want? 5 minutes?
That's Mr. Draper.
Mr. Draper?
Yeah, I think we can take care of it in 5 minutes.
Oh, we could do 10.
Do you want 10? Is that more comfortable for you?
No.
Five is
Gonna be
fine.
ready to
Motion for a 5-minute recess,
But
please.
just
I have a
before we
second on
go,
that?
We gotta
Oh,
vote
just
on
before we
second.
go, just before we go.
I want to make sure that I've got the technology shift, labor addition. We just added the school committee stipend.
Yep.
The .5 dean,
Mm-hmm.
CMS dean, capital investment, late bus, and a .5 TA CMS.
And the reduced
Substitute
substitute allocation.
Substitute allocation and the math specialist.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay?
Okay. Did I get a second? Ms. Chambers, you second that?
Yeah, I did.
5-minute
I
break?
did.
Okay, those in favor?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And break for 5 minutes. It's 9:16. We'll be back by 9:21.
I don't feel bad doing anything.
You hold it up on that.
How you doing, Bill?
Not better nights.
Yeah.
Fight the fires.
Oh, I just got a text from Brendan, they had a fire, an RV fire.
I don't know who says it.
What'd you say?
Do you make a recommendation? You make a
Um,
recommendation.
Yeah,
You make it.
Take it back.
Just
Good
past
is
like
good.
65.
Numbers, thank you.
It's a better approach.
Yeah. He said everybody's safe.
All right.
That's the one.
I don't see Miss Josie.
Mr. Callahan is up.
I'm just, this whole process tonight sucked.
It's not easy.
It's a hot mic.
No, we've done better.
It's a lot of emotion. Where are they? Are they outside?
I see it the way I see it.
And
Say it the way I
Charlestown
see
is
it.
always the rich people.
The two of them got their heads skinned.
We're
That's
actually,
okay.
we're
That's all right.
we're actually,
I'm sure high level conversation.
look at your census.
Thank you all. We do have some new numbers. Thank you, Ned. And
I recommend adoption of the FY '23 budget with the final figure in the amount of $68,911,694. Total budget including operating capital, special revenue, enterprise and debt service expenditures, but does not include revenue, $11,612,622, with the members' towns' contributions to be $55,230,097, an increase of 0.96%. 0.96%.
So we took off the 1%, so it's now just 0.96% increase.
Yeah, it's like 0.9 right now.
0.96.
0.9.
Okay. Well, that's a big deal.
well, what was the total? Yeah.
That's actually less than 1%.
Yes,
correct.
it's less than
That's a good way
1%.
of looking at it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Callahan, you're,
So moved.
so moved. There's been a motion, and may I have a second? A second, Catherine. Okay, now we can open it up to conversations or questions. What was our total, oh, sorry, Mr., go ahead. Mr.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, Ned, did you have a chance to look at member town
Yes, I was
contributions
gonna ask.
and what the overall increase to the towns were?
So the increase to the towns before state aid is Charlestown 1.74%, Richmond 1.2%, Hopkinton 0.21%.
Point what?
0.21.
After state aid?
But this
Before
is
state aid.
for the
So after-
town's contribution only,
Before state aid.
Before state aid.
before state aid.
So do you have the numbers for after?
For after state aid, it's 1.92% for Charlestown, 1.32% for Richmond, and 0.29% for Hopkinton.
0.29?
0.29. And the total cuts that we made this evening were amounted to
I have it,
543,308.
543,308.
Those actually weren't cuts, so some of that money was moved, right? They weren't cuts, they were moved to escrow.
Correct.
Yes.
cut out of the operating budget.
But it was still a reduction in our budget.
Right, so it was 330,000 moved.
No.
Approximately.
The taxpayers are not on the hook for this.
Yeah, tax, you're not on the taxpayers are not, I guess as Bill Day said, not on the hook for this.
Today.
Yeah, today. Brian, did you have, oh,
No, ma'am.
No.
I'm,
any other questions or comments? Any other things open for discussion? This has been,
Did we
a rough night. We appreciate all your work.
I think
And
so,
your
too.
input,
Huh?
too.
Yeah, we vote on it, right?
So, no, we do vote on it, yes. So, do you want to hear those numbers again?
No,
Or we have it?
I got 'em.
Okay, everyone knows what we're voting on? Okay, so those in favor of, okay,
A 0.96% increase, which will total for the member towns' contributions at $55,230,097.
okay, those in favor? Yeah, do you have a comment? Oh,
Yes, just a clarification. If this is rejected, what happens next?
Do it again.
Gonna vote.
well, it depends.
Per the
When-
Charahoe
when-
Act, the school committee has the opportunity to attempt another time, as long as it's before July 1st.
Okay, and then it goes back to this year's budget?
Correct.
Right, yes.
Okay, that's all.
Did you have another comment, Mr. Anderson?
No.
Okay. Okay. And, okay, I'm going to take it to a vote now. Anybody else? Okay, those in favor of the reductions? Okay, any nays, abstentions, or recusals?
That's it in a nutshell.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
The next item is the all-day budget referendum date. I recommend holding the all-day referendum on Thursday, May 5th, 2022. We have confirmed that this date will work with the 3 towns, and we've spoken to the town clerks to ensure there are no conflicts.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to schedule the all-day budget referendum date for Thursday, May 5th, 2022. Any discussion on this matter? Questions or concerns? I'll take that to a vote. Those in favor? Okay, that was unanimous. The budget referendum will be May 5th, 2022, and we hope all comes out to vote. Voices need to be heard. All voices.
That's on consent agenda.
Yeah. We're on to consent agenda items. Does anything need to be pulled?
A1 and 2.
Thank you. Anyone else need to pull anything? There's lots on there. Okay. Looks like it's just A1 and 2. Yes, we've got a lot to read tonight, Mr.
So you ready?
Luzon. Yes.
So, Chair, I make a motion to move the remainder. But before I do, I would like to acknowledge donations. Give me a while, folks.
Yes, a lot.
One, from the following to the Richmond School Garden. Top of the line landscape, Josh Hall, Chepachet, Rhode Island, miscellaneous supplies, 300 various sized pots, chicken wire, shovels, rakes, pitchfork, hoe, clippers, loppers, tiller, roller, pickaxes, various plant stakes, burlap pack, large wooden planter box, hose, vegetables, large resin, white trellis, metal and wooden shelf racks, total value $1,184. Thank you very much. From Adler Brothers, Greenville, Rhode Island, large round outdoor planters and 7 yards of loom, total value $396. Thank you very much. Chepachet Hardware, Chepachet, Rhode Island, $25 gift certificate and 1 bale of Pro Mix, total value $83. Thank you very much. The Town Trader, Chepachet, Rhode Island, large galvanized basin, total value $35. Thank you. Lightning Ridge Farm, Harmony, Rhode Island, 5 8x4 sections of fencing, total $200. Thank you. Hilltop Firewood Lumber in Burrville, Rhode Island, welding of shelves, total value $150. Real New England, Smithfield, Rhode Island, newly made wooden cable spools, total value $450. Victory Supply, Harrisville, Rhode Island, case of garden pots, total value $75. Pro Septic from Joe Procopio, Johnston, Rhode Island, 4 hours excavation time and weed removal, total value $1,000. Zach Payon Hart, Hope Valley, Rhode Island, 2 hours removal and dumping of yard waste from greenhouse, total value $250. Landworks, Joe Procopio, Johnston, Rhode Island, transport of compost from Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation to Richmond School, total value $200. RIRRC, Johnston, Rhode Island, 10 yards of compost, total value $350. From Mike Videtta, Country View Golf Club, Harrisville, Rhode Island, driving range net to protect the garden balls from the softball fields, total value $1,500. Eagle Scout, my 2 boys are Eagles. Scout William Bryson for his Eagle project, raised funds and donated the internal beds to the school greenhouse, and he and his troop, Richmond Boy Scout Troop 1, donated their time installing cedar raised beds inside the greenhouses, clearing and leveling the ground outside, assembling and installing 2 8x8 butterfly garden-shaped structures, filling up all of the beds with compost and weeding inside the greenhouse. Special thanks to Nancy Perney, Katie Corrosion for organizing a prom dress drive in the administration building, which resulted in the collection of 26 prom gowns. Yes, there is a movie out there in reference to that. From the following: Pam Chattel, of Charo Support Professional; Jennifer Durkin, Special Ed Director; Marilyn Grant, Hopkinton, Rhode Island; Mary Ippolito from Charleston; Kathy Kozel, Charleston Administrative Assistant; Gina Picard, Charahoe Superintendent; Corinne Perney, Richmond School Teacher; Jack Perney, Charleston; Christy Provencher, Charleston, and Rycan. Thank you very much.
Second.
Okay, so
So Ryan seconded, I'm sorry, thank you.
So there's been a motion and a second to move all of those off for the consent agenda items. Those in favor? Okay. And that's any abstentions, recusals, or nays? No, that was unanimous. Okay, now we're back minutes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to accept A1 executive session minutes of March 22nd, 2022, approval of executive session minutes of February 8th, 2022, minutes not sealed.
Second.
There's been a motion by Mr. Luzon and a second by Mr. Callahan to recommend the executive session minutes of March 22nd, 2022. Any discussion or comments with regards to those minutes? No, then I'll take it to a vote. Those in favor? Any nays, abstentions, recusals? One abstention. Mr. Abbott. Thank you.
Madam Chair, make a motion to approve A2 regular session minutes of March 22nd, 2022.
Second.
There's been a motion by Mr. Luzon and I believe by Mr. Legari, seconded this time, to approve the regular session minutes of March 22nd, 2022. Again, any discussion or questions with regards to those minutes? Okay, take it to a vote. Those in favor? Any nays? No. Abstentions? Mr. Abbott, one abstention. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Luzon, for reading all of that.
Okay.
I need the oxygen.
We have no subcommittee reports at this time. For my superintendent's report, I mentioned that I would provide the update as it related to student services for ESSER 2 and 3 at the meeting last month. We had a discussion around our bullying report numbers, and we were discussing what we needed to focus on regarding our student supports and services. In order to deepen that work, we are using ESSER to hire 2 student service specialists who will work with our school teams to implement the state social emotional learning standards in response to the increased mental health needs as a result of the pandemic. The specialists will provide ongoing coaching and professional learning to assist grades pre-K through 12 educators in implementing the SEL standards, which are the social emotional learning standards, in the classroom. These student service specialists will provide direct support to classroom teachers via coaching and modeling, and will provide other supports in the form of instructional guidance and resources. We are also working and piloting our animal-assisted education to support student mental health as well. Our student service specialists, along with our director of special education, will coordinate this effort and align to our district vision. We've also begun to plan for our peer-to-peer mentoring program, which was presented at the Health and Wellness Subcommittee meeting and is moving forward in the fall with the partnership of the Chris Collins Foundation, which will be paying for the cost of training, travel, etc. We have written several grants to support the work in this area to enhance the district's work to provide time for planning, guidance, and support as our students struggle with behaviors due to increased trauma, anxiety, and depression. And for the coming events, for April 12th and 13th, we have additional RICAS and ELA testing in grade 4. On April 13th, we have SAT testing grade 11. On April 14th, PSAT testing in grade 10. On April 15th, we begin our spring recess, so there's no school for students and staff this Friday. And next week, April 19th through April 22nd, there is no school for students and school year staff. April 25th, we have secondary report cards available on Power School for all families. At 428, we have our Rhode Island National Next Generation Sciences testing grade 11. For 429, Hope Valley Decade Dance, 6 to 9 p.m. in the middle school gym. For April 29th, high school junior prom is 6 to 10 p.m. at the Lake of Isles in Connecticut. May 3rd and May 4th is RICAS math testing for grade 3, and May 5th and May 6th is RICAS math testing in grade 4.
We're on to requests for future agenda items or legal opinions. Do we have any? No, on this, none for this evening. Yes, Mr. Day.
Not really a request, but this meeting on the RIDE proposals, I think it's important that we get some of the community out there to see what we're really up against. you
Yes,
know?
Miss Ed Azasoff was nice enough to send it to, it actually was in the April E update. I sent it out to all families. Andrea added it to her blog, and we're actually resending it out Thursday.
Because I was going on the emails I got from Tim Duffy, and there's one out there in the house that is going to require students to fill out a loan application or they can't graduate.
The FAFSA.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what the hell are these people? You know, this.
They don't work in schools. They don't get it.
You know, they want to make sure that the kids think they got to go to college to be successful, I guess. Sorry about that.
You ready?
Yes, sir. We're ready. Thank you, Mr. Day.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Luzon made a motion, Ms. Luzon made a motion to adjourn. Mr. Callahan seconded. Those in favor? I don't think we need a discussion on that. Okay.
Happy vacation, everyone, and Easter, if you celebrate it, enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank
as
you.
well. I want to go home with Linda. She always like,
You can come to my house.